Hey guys,
Can't
I'm
we
just
though?
getting this all set up, and this is Nurse Mark and the
Hey, hey.
Green Nurse Podcast. We
Woo!
are here. What are we here for? To bring hope,
Inspiration,
inspiration, growth,
growth,
and
and
healing,
healing.
right? Mark and I like to talk about things that people don't like to talk about. And the reason why it is important to talk about things is to decrease stigma around these issues for healing.
Yes, yes,
It's as
yes.
simple as that.
It is.
So tonight's topic, men, women, irritable bowel, and cannabis. And, no one wants to talk about poop. Mark and
We're
I
going
were
to
just,
talk about poop. Sherry and I were talking before we get on this thing. You know what? It's a topic of conversation with every nurse. We all talk about poop. Every shift change, what do we talk about with the patients?
did the
Did they
patient
poop?
pass gas? Did they move their bowels? The color, the
Yeah,
consistency? Did you dip it for blood? Guaiac?
right.
Seriously, like this is,
Listen, it's important. We have to know these things because it's absolutely directly related to your health. And if you're in the hospital and you're not pooping, you ain't leaving.
and and part of my story, like for people that are out there,
Mm.
literally is, I mean, it is. I can make fun of it now, but at the time I was sick and suffering.
Oh, you weren't. Yeah.
I had pseudomembranous C. diff colitis, which
Mhm.
landed me in the emergency room, the intensive care unit with megacolon. And that disease almost
So what's
killed me.
megacolon?
Megacolon is when your colon it gets
People
bigger
don't
and
know.
bigger and
Yeah.
bigger and bigger because things were not moving through my colon. The
Mhm.
bacteria in my gut started to expand, and these spores were replicating so fast in my intestinal tract that it completely wreaked havoc on all of the good
It's a
bacteria.
deadly thing.
I almost
Condition
lost
for
my
sure.
intestine. They
Yeah.
pretty much told my mother, "We don't know if she's going to make it." And just to think of
Legit.
dying of C. diff, no thank you. I mean, seriously,
Yeah.
you know, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the reality is there. And so, cannabis saved my life. Cannabis and multiple other healing tools saved my life. So it's just interesting how I think this conversation is important because no one wants to talk about it. It was probably the most embarrassing thing that I have ever
Oh.
had to experience in my entire
And
life.
you know what? And the funniest part of that is, Sherry, everybody does it. They have to do it to continue to survive. Because if you don't, you'll die. It's just like that. If you get an obstruction, you're dead if it doesn't get cleared.
Yeah,
And yet we find that we can't talk about it.
well, it's just interesting too because of social taboos, gender
Uh-huh.
expectations, which dictate what women, should be
Yeah.
doing and shouldn't be doing in regards and secretive about the bowel function. This can
Hmm.
cause isolation. Like my mother, sorry, mom, I'm gonna rat you out. She told me that she never farted. Okay, and I mean, can you imagine? You, how
I,
many times we fart a day? Like seriously?
yeah. Yeah.
So for me to
It's a
think
large
that.
number. It's a very large number, Sherry.
So even just the whole taboo around
Yeah.
excretion and smell,
Right.
and it's a horrifying thing. And I'm telling you, it was something that I had to look in the face.
Now, see,
Chronic.
that's a funny thing because there's a difference between guys and girls with that. Because guys, farting is like it's a thing that you do. You
All the time.
all the time around all your buddies. You catch them in a small room. It's the best. I mean, like we're encouraged to actually embrace our gas, right?
And
So
embrace our farts.
and yeah, really embrace our farts. And women are like, no, not allowed.
I
Women,
mean,
I've dated women that absolutely, for a number of years, they never, ever, ever pass gas in front of me.
I
I don't know
could
if they,
I can identify, like, I just the embarrassment, and just like it was just so embarrassing at the time, really really horrifying. Like I could talk
yeah.
about anything, but just like, chronic nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, incontinence, right, all of that, not being able to leave the home, not knowing what's going to
Right.
happen
For
when you
you, with
eat.
everything that was going on, all of those things.
It was
Yeah.
horrible. It was just completely mental, emotional, spiritual
Hmm.
drain, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? And not
Yeah.
being able to take care of yourself, feed yourself and then take care of your children. So it was horrible. So irritable bowel. So basically cannabis saved my life, plus other health and wellness tools. I'm not on any medications. I have a perfectly healthy diet, but I do have to watch what I eat. So let's talk about, do I still have irritable bowel? Yeah, I do. But it's a diagnosis that isn't active. It's on my diagnoses, colitis, remember, C. diff colitis, irritable bowel. But I'm not living the story of irritable bowel because I take care of myself. So we're going to talk about what is irritable bowel disease versus irritable bowel syndrome.
And I have been, years ago, I was diagnosed with IBS. And it's sort of it's a checkbox that says, we really don't know what's causing it. We don't know why you have these issues, but this is what you have. Check.
So basically, and we're going to get into that in a little bit too, because Ethan Russo is a doctor who actually, I might just bring that up right now. Right. Which is really cool. I wrote this all down. So Ethan Russo in 2016 wrote an article confirming studies that he did in 2001 and 2004. So it was the study was called The Clinical Endocannabinoid Deficiency Reconsidered. Current research supports the theory in migraine, fibromyalgia, and irritable bowel, and other treatment-resistant syndromes, meaning that these patients with these diagnoses have a clinical endocannabinoid deficiency, and they all have particular unifying pathophysiology things that are present. For example, all three of the conditions manifest in hyperalgesia states with pain, and they're clinically diagnosed based on subjective criteria. And then they can't find objective criteria. They can't find objective information to quantify it to make a specific diagnosis.
Right.
All are diagnoses of exclusion, meaning that they, go through multiple
rule
tests.
Out everything else one by one until they get to this point where they just have ruled everything that they know out as the cause, right?
And then the interesting thing too is that, all of these conditions also have an incidence, a comorbidity of anxiety and depression, right? It's the chicken and the egg dilemma. So they've been labeled as psychosomatic, right? And so, these diagnoses, these patients, that's what this whole medical trauma, they don't believe me, what's going on. And so if doctors had an understanding of the clinical, of the endocannabinoid system, just how much better it would be for patients. When patients come to me and say they don't know what's wrong with me, they have no idea, they don't know, I go, that's good news to me.
That is good news.
Because that intuitively tells me that there's something bigger that's missing. And it's not a pill. It's not a drug. It's not a surgery.
You're not deficient in antacids, right? It's just there's something else amiss. Yeah.
Exactly. So irritable bowel and irritable bowel syndrome. So this is interesting. This is pretty cool because we kind of lump everything into, gut. So the irritable bowel disease is a structural issue, right? So it's such as ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Right? And then the irritable bowel syndrome is a functional disease. So it means that and what it means too is the contents of your large intestines either move too quickly or too slowly. And tests generally don't show any reason why you have those symptoms. So gender differences, Mark.
Oh.
Who gets the raw end of the deal?
Oh, girls, you get the raw end of this deal yet again. Yeah, more prevalent in women. Very much so. I can tell you, I probably have a half a dozen or more women in my life, family members and very close friends that suffer from colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome. Absolutely. The IBS, many, many, many more, but IBD, definitely at least a half a dozen people very close to me, all female.
So the interesting thing is to why women, so what the research has shown that women with irritable bowel symptoms generally change during the various stages of their menstrual cycle. So, with irritable bowel syndrome, people have either diarrhea or constipation or bloating or gas or a combination of different things. You know what I mean? Digestive problems, just a lot of different symptoms. But for women, it can change and fluctuate depending on the type during the which phase of your menstrual cycle you're in. So during the menstrual cycle, women create more, some women, not all women, create more prostaglandins. And what they do is they cause the uterus to contract. So you can get, move the bloodstream, move the blood out, right? And so what happens is if there's too many of these prostaglandins that are contracting the uterus, they can travel in the bloodstream and go to the bowel, right? And then they cause the bowel to contract and to cramp. And then that's when diarrhea happens, right? So research has shown that non-steroidals can help. Well, guess what? Cannabinoids can help as well.
Yes.
Right? So also with women, 2 weeks before menstruation, right, there's an increase in progesterone, and that relaxes the smooth muscle, right? And so what happens is if you relax the smooth muscle, it can slow down motility in our gut, which can increase the transit time, which means that the food's taken forever to get out, and that can cause constipation.
Yeah.
Right. So irritable bowel with constipation is also more prevalent in women than men. And they basically said that the sex hormones and gender differences play a huge role in the pathophysiology, which I find is fascinating.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate, but you're right. I think the sex hormones have a lot to do with it. And, my anecdotal experience is that women suffer much more from constipation than men do, at least from, again, my anecdotal experience.
Yeah. No. Just let that shit go.
It's not that easy, right? You got to, so we'll talk about, some things.
Talk about some strategies. Absolutely.
Yeah. And cannabis is definitely in the mix for sure.
Right. So the part that's cool is the endocannabinoid system. So why does cannabis work on our digestive tract? Well, it's because we have an endocannabinoid system. And if you heard Mark and I talk, this is why we have it's right over there, that little umbrella.
Yeah.
So my umbrella concept of explaining the endocannabinoid system. Imagine that, right? It just makes sense because it's such an abstract concept. And just imagining that we are an umbrella, and at the top of the umbrella is the endocannabinoid system, and all the spokes of the umbrella are all of the different organ systems that make up our body and our immune system. And the fabric that connects the spokes to the umbrella are the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to different areas of our body or the spokes of the umbrella to tell our body to do something or stop doing something. Very tippy top of the umbrella is the endocannabinoid system. We make cannabinoids. They're called internal endogenous cannabinoids, very similar to the plant, upon demand to shower on our umbrella, right?
Right.
You want to get rained on. And
they get rained on and then they dissipate. The body just naturally processes them and they're gone.
Yes. And so the goal of
their job.
They do the job is to keep the umbrella going up and down nicely, homeostasis or balance. So if we're not making enough of our own, we can have
there are a lot of things that affect that.
Correct.
Right?
Tons of things that can affect endocannabinoid deficiency, ranging from genetics to pharmaceuticals to alcohol consumption to diet,
tobacco,
lack of exercise, not, managing stress, insomnia. So there's a whole host of things that can cause this endocannabinoid deficiency. So anyway, so the endocannabinoid systems works on the gut 3 different ways, 3 major ways. Mark?
Yeah.
Number 1, it works to decrease inflammation, or actually modulates inflammation. I hate to say it. So basically it's an immunomodulator. Immune system up, immune system down. So it modulates inflammation. Right. So it modulates pain. And it modulates pain. Absolutely. So we've got receptors in our gut, CB1 and CB2 receptors in our gut, which protects our gut, decrease to keep inflammation at bay. The most powerful one that I thought that I had the most, interaction with had to do with regulates digestive action. Right. Yeah. So gastric motility, gastric secretions, right? So the endocannabinoid system regulates the gastric action. And so cannabinoids can actually help too. So if people are having a lot of diarrhea, THC is wonderful. THC products are great to help decrease gastric motility.
Right.
CBD is great too for the other things. So a lot of people that are constipated, we have seen using even water soluble CBD. I've seen people have really good, So basically it regulates, it modulates inflammation, regulates digestive action. So motility and secretions, right? And then when we activate these receptors, it calms down calms down the nausea, slows the emptying of the stomach if it needs to, reduces the stomach acid and stimulates our appetite.
Right. And this is all the endocannabinoid system.
All of it.
In play. Whether it's, again, it's endo, it's internal, it's our own system. So we're creating these cannabinoids that are going to, or we're creating these chemicals that mimic cannabinoids.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And that's how our body regulates all of this. Yeah.
Yes.
Fascinating stuff. I love this stuff.
In the communication, and this is like, we keep getting back to the umbrella. So right now we're talking about one spoke of the umbrella. We're talking about, the digestive system. Now, the part that's cool too is we're going to see how the interconnectedness of the endocannabinoid system, because of the third thing that it does, that the endocannabinoid system does with the gut, is that it regulates communication between the gut and the brain. This blew my mind away. So basically we have our central nervous system, right?
Yeah.
And we have our enteric nervous system. Our enteric nervous system is the nervous system that runs parallel to our central nervous system, which is put side by side. The enteral nervous system runs from our esophagus all the way to our rectum and our vagus nerve, Mark.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
The vagus nerve, right? Parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system. So that vagus nerve is extremely involved in almost all of the interactions with the gut and many other things. So it's huge. And so here you have those two nervous systems, and the endocannabinoid system signaling
allows them to communicate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember how you remember the saying, you better trust your gut instinct. That's what it's talking about. It's literally your gut is part of your brain. Like it's you, when you should trust your gut, you really should trust your gut, because it's getting signals that we're not seeing with our other five senses. So that it's amazing.
So I do love that. It's like, your gut, your enteric nervous system, central nervous system uses the same receptors, neurons, and neurotransmitters. They speak the same language, and it is the endocannabinoid system that allows that to happen. So it just makes sense when we have brain changes such as stress or pain that can alter.
Reflected in your gut.
Exactly. Right.
When you get nervous before you start to do a podcast, you get that funny feeling in your gut. You get you get those butterflies, or let's take it when somebody does public speaking. Every time I get up and start to do something, I'm nervous, and I feel it in my gut, because it's that connection. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the other thing too, so if you think about this, so improved bowel health improves brain health. And there's this whole concept of nutritional psychiatry. And that's some of the things that we're going to talk about next, is how do we support our endocannabinoid system for a healthy gut? Right. We know the big things to avoid. It's my favorite list.
We do.
You ready?
It's all the things that, we've been bred to eat, right? It's the things we've been trained to eat in our society for the last 50 years anyway, right?
Fast food, fried food, fake food.
My grandparents grew up, right? Cooking their own food.
Cooking their own meals, not eating out of a can or a box.
Right. But they transitioned to that because it got to be easier, right? So it becomes a convenience thing. But you're right. So what are the things? What are you going to avoid?
So it's interesting. We want to avoid, and this is very interesting too. So before, I have to just bring up history a little bit, because it just fascinates me. So you just think about how we had hemp in our diets before the Marijuana Tax Act, right? And so just think about at that time, what happened, right? Alcohol prohibition ended, right? The food industry started using more additives and chemicals, right?
Listen,
and then the pharmaceutical
so chemistry
industry
has a lot to do with it, right? Yeah, food, in how our food is manufactured. If there's a less expensive way. That's what high fructose corn syrup is about. It's a less expensive method to make things sweet. So they use high fructose corn syrup to sweeten their products. The only problem is it's very, very bad for us. It's not good for us at all.
So the fast food, fried food, fake food, artificial flavors, artificial colorings, trans fat, hydrogenated oils, high fructose corn syrup, and processed sugar, bad for the gut.
Bad.
What's good for the gut? There's so many good things. There's so many good things. We have a huge list. Right, Mark?
Tons of stuff.
So the number one thing I would have to say, even for me with my gut, is consuming foods that are rich in cannabinoids, right? From cannabis and hemp. So eating infused foods, like infusing the butters, the oils, the olive oil, the coconut oil, the MCT oil, and incorporating various cannabinoids in my diet is how I have felt that has helped me the most. And then you can get various cannabis, and then there's other hemp products, hemp food, hemp protein, hemp milk.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Hemp protein bars.
Hemp protein's a great protein. Absolutely. Has all the amino acids. It's a fabulous profile.
It is a fabulous profile. And then the various cannabinoids and terpenes that are gut promoting. And we all know about THC, we all know about CBD, but there's some of the other minor cannabinoids that are very healthy for the gut. Mark was just talking about THCA.
Yeah. So you have it on the list here, juicing raw cannabis. So if you're in a state that allows you to grow cannabis, if you're in a rec state and they have a certain amount that you can grow, or if you're a medicinal patient and you can grow it, you can juice it. And THC, before it becomes THC via decarboxylation, which means it gets heated up, right? A raw cannabis plant, you can't get high off of it because the THC is not there. What's there, however, is the precursor chemical, which is THCA in its acidic form. Well, THCA is 10 times more potent as an anti-inflammatory than CBD. And CBD has great anti-inflammatory properties. THCA is 10 times more potent. In other words, if you use that and juice it, you're going to have a much greater effect in decreasing your inflammation in your body. It's really super, super powerful. The issue is it's not that easy of a chemical to work with during the extraction process. It's a kind of a volatile chemical, and it's not easy to extract. So that's why
you don't want to heat it up, because you want to make sure
you don't want to heat it up. Whatever you do, don't heat it up, because that's when you have THC and you're going to be a little bit high.
Yes. And so there was a story, Mark, about a father who actually grew cannabis for his twins who both had Crohn's disease. And these were young girls, and their Crohn's disease went into full remission from just juicing cannabis. So I found that to be very fascinating. And then the other cannabinoids too, CBG is the mother of all cannabinoids. It's before THC and CBD even get formed.
CBD comes from, it's like the stem cell.
The mother.
It's the mother. Everything springs from the mother.
And I found CBG to be really, really beneficial in specifically working on the CB2 receptors in the gut and our immune system. I don't use it all the time, but if I feel like I'm coming into a flare, I generally pick up that product and use it for a month. CBG has been really, really helpful in calming the gastrointestinal system from inflammation. It does something a little bit different than THC. I'm not as impaired when I take it. So CBG is a non-impairing cannabinoid. And so I could tolerate higher doses of that in the daytime, so I wouldn't be impaired. CBG is wonderful. And I've also seen a lot of patients with gastric cancer and abdominal cancers use CBG in conjunction with small amounts of THC and CBD, and have had really good results in managing symptoms, which has been great. And then beta caryophyllene is a terpene that acts as a cannabinoid, but the beta caryophyllene, I just think is fascinating because it can be found in herbs and spices.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can add
terpenes are in many, many, many plants. And we've been consuming terpenes forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And beta caryophyllene is not only a terpene, but it acts as a cannabinoid, specifically in our gut receptors, which I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here's the different. Okay, so just if you guys have gut issues and you want to think of some things to cook and use and spices, just think of this: black pepper, clove, cinnamon, oregano, basil, lavender, rosemary are all rich in the terpenes and phytocannabinoid beta caryophyllene.
Yeah.
I really, really, I love that. And when I'm looking at labs of CBD profiles, I'm always looking to see.
You're looking for that. Yeah, I read a study where they were studying the entourage effect, because we still don't really know why cannabis is so powerful when it's in combination with everything that's in the plant. It's called the entourage effect. We really still don't really know why, but research is ongoing. And one of the things that they did find was that the only terpene that showed any sort of cannabinoid-like effect in the body that they could really see during the studies was beta caryophyllene.
Wow.
Yeah.
So here's beta caryophyllene is definitely, and I love pepper, and cinnamon and all of those other things. And then the other thing too is supplements, adaptogens, Ayurvedic herbs, and fungus. All of those different mushrooms that
fungi.
exist.
Oh my gosh. Oh, have you seen, as a side note, when we're talking about that, have you seen the documentary Fantastic Fungi?
No.
Oh my gosh, you got to look it up. I'm telling you, folks, to really watch this thing. It'll blow your mind.
Okay, so okay, so you're gonna have to send me a link.
I will do it. Yeah, it's on Netflix, on Prime. I watched it. I'm gonna watch it again. It was that good that I'm gonna watch it again this week.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Mark sent me an awesome breathwork meditation. So Mark and I are like, he's totally introducing new things to me. And so I did this 15-minute breathwork meditation. Holy schmoly, Mark, like I had to go lay down for it. Totally was so interesting, but it was just what I needed, because I needed to unplug.
These are the other things we're talking about, Sherry, that affect the endocannabinoid system.
Yeah.
For sure. This is gonna upregulate and make you a healthier person.
Yep.
Oh, and that cold shower. I always have to mention that.
The cold shower.
Cold immersion.
Cold immersion. I know. Cryotherapy.
Stimulates your endocannabinoid system. Wow.
Totally does. Totally does. And then there's one other thing too that I want to mention for gut health. The probiotic lactobacillus does modulate the endocannabinoid system in the gut. So probiotics are huge. Echinacea is also another one that works on the endocannabinoid system in the gut as well. And then the other thing too is, we all know, to support a healthy gut, right? Sleep hygiene, exercise, all of that other stuff, that mental, emotional, spiritual stuff, meditation, prayer, recreation.
All has an effect. It all has an effect on your health. Really does.
So the endocannabinoid system regulates every single aspect of our bowel, and every level of irritable bowel syndrome, anti-inflammatory signals, serotonin signaling, and maintaining balance of healthy gut bacteria.
And it comes down to that, right? It comes down to healthy gut bacteria, because one of the things that they do now, a standard protocol treatment for what you had was a fecal transplant, right? You need to have that gut biome, right?
Guess what? You guys, y'all want a confession? I'm going to confess here right on Facebook Live. I had a fecal transplant.
And literally, folks, is what they do. They take poop from someone else.
Oh yeah, they took literally. They took a fresh. This is a comedy show in itself. At the time, it's not funny, but I can totally laugh at it now, because I'm sure there's other people that are going through it.
You have to be able to laugh, man.
But I'm telling you, the whole experience was so humbling. It was literally. So I can literally.
But it worked.
But it didn't work all the way. I'm going to tell you, it worked 50%.
Oh, yeah.
What ended up making it work? So the fecal transplant allowed me to come off of heavy doses of antibiotics. I was on 2 grams of vancomycin a day, plus multiple other
if anybody knows anything about vancomycin, it's one of the most caustic antibiotics. It's like a last level antibiotic, because it's so
it's like the vincristine of chemotherapy. Seriously.
Yeah.
it's like, that's like the worst
Yeah.
chemotherapy ever, right? So
It's right. Right.
vancomycin
And
is
that's what
right up
vancomycin
there.
is like that. Yeah.
So on vancomycin for 2 years, and I
Oh
couldn't
my
get off
God.
of it. And so the fecal transplant allowed me to get off of vancomycin. And so my test was negative. However, I still suffered from symptoms, gastrointestinal symptoms. So I had all of the symptoms,
So
but
get
just
this.
didn't
What do you
have the
think
C. diff.
happened? What do you think happened? So
Canada
you solved one part of the equation, but your endocannabinoid system was still not
up
repaired.
to par. It was not. And I'm
Yeah.
so lucky. I mean, seriously, because
Yeah.
I was doing, and that was the other thing too. So even though the C. diff was negative and all the tests were negative, I still had every single symptom, and they would vary in degrees. And my life was so unpredictable that affect my
Hmm.
mental health. That's when
Hmm.
we're going to do a show on agoraphobia. I had that too.
Yeah.
Right. So we're seriously, so it was really, 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 really important
Hmm.
um, to look at everything,
Yeah.
when we're working with patients.
It
And
is.
that was the thing too, is that, part of my story is that if these doctors knew about the endocannabinoid system sooner, I
Hmm.
probably would have not been circling the drain of despair for as long as I did.
For as long as you
Because,
did. Yeah.
because this is the interesting thing. Prior to
Hmm.
me getting sick, the only thing I had was ADHD and migraine headaches.
Hmm.
Where would the light bulb go off? Migraine headaches.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if a clinician, a doctor, a nurse saw me and every single diagnosis that I was collecting, before you knew it, at the end of 2.5 years, so many diagnoses, if they saw at the beginning, she has migraine headaches, maybe it just would have clicked for them to think that cannabinoids could have been a solution or a supplement or a tool to help make
Hmm.
everything else work.
Yeah.
So truly, having
So
information,
what made the difference on the other 50%?
cannabinoids. So
Boom.
it was like, but here, this is the interesting thing. So I had that surgical procedure. It helped me, but I still was sick and suffering. So
Hmm.
the symptoms were still there. I still wasn't absorbing nutrients. I had a difficult time eating. And then what
Hmm.
happened is that's when I developed, my immune system still wasn't great. I developed an autoimmune condition on top of it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's when my mental health, chronic myofascial pain
Hmm.
syndrome, polymyalgia rheumatica. So you can see gut was halfway fixed, but the unfixed gut led
Hmm.
to other autoimmune conditions, chronic pain, circling the
Right.
drain,
So they
nine
got
yards.
they put a new gut biome in, really. They
Yes.
augmented what you had with somebody else's, and you grew all this new bacteria in your gut, which is the healthy thing to do. Without it, you can't digest food. Uh, and yeah, so here
And
you
then
are. All of
the
these things
cannabis,
added
and
on.
then the cannabis came in and made all the medications work better, which I was able to get off, and then
Hmm.
made all of the other health and wellness tools that I was using work again that didn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Right. So truly. So it was traditional. So initially it was traditional therapy, surgery, and
Hmm.
then cannabis.
Hmm.
And I truly believe that if I had cannabis a little bit sooner, that these other therapies would have worked quicker. But that's not
Yeah.
how the story went. And
Because cannabis lifts the boat, right? It affects so many things in your body positively that it allows you to start to participate in those other things. They'll use those other tools that you had in the toolkit, and it all
yeah,
starts to work. And then here you are,
here
like
I am. Here
the
I
epitome of
am.
healthy
That's
woman.
So, well, that's what it is this plant
Yeah.
has now changed my life. I have a mission, a vision, a purpose to bring hope,
Mhm.
inspiration, and growth for healing, just to share information and share stories, and
Yeah.
even come a little bit more out of the closet with my own personal story, because I guarantee you I have been through it. I mean, when
Yeah.
you I've been through it. And I want to go over one last thing too. This is like another hypothesis. So
All
we were
right.
saying about, really quickly, so we were talking about whole plant and the entourage effect.
Hmm.
So go back to the umbrella. Okay. So if you
Yeah.
think about it, if we have just THC or CBD showering on our umbrella,
Hmm.
right? That's
Hmm.
better than nothing. But just imagine the whole plant
Yeah.
showering on the umbrella all
Hmm.
at the same time, right?
Hmm.
Going where it needs to go, doing what it needs to do to bring homeostasis and balance. And so basically, that whole plant supports the rest of the cannabinoids and terpenes, so people don't need as much Well,
Right.
that's what I,
Right.
so I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty cool, that's just my
Yeah. And
thought.
it's not about getting high. That's
No,
the stigma. That's the old story. It's not. It's just not about that. It's about living your best life.
totally. It is about
Yeah.
living your best life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cannabinoid therapeutics plus cannabis plus a healthy lifestyle. We do more of what supports the endocannabinoid system. We do less of
Mhm.
what does not support the endocannabinoid system. And basically, cannabinoid therapeutics promotes total health care, bio, psycho, social, spiritual healing.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, this has been a great conversation, Mark,
As usual.
as
We have
usual.
conversations.
Yes. And so, Mark has a book. I've been inspired by his book that I've been reading, and I have it at my bedside. It is
Oh,
called Absolutely Fucking Amazing. And it is
living the
on,
life you love.
it's great, Living the Life You Love. And so, we're going to put a link up here. I'm going to go back and edit this, and we're going to make sure you all can have access to this book. It's truly life changing. And some of the things that Mark writes in his book is I've been utilizing some
Mm.
tools that I'd used in the past that I'd forgotten about.
We
And that,
do. We do. Most of the
right.
time, we just need to be reminded that we have these tools in the toolkit.
Yep.
And man, when we pull them out, we start using them.
We become
Life
more
does get
powerful and
amazing.
loving.
I swear, I'm telling you, I have the most amazing life ever.
All
Yes.
right. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Join us next week for another Nurse Mark and the Green
And the
Nurse
green
podcast,
nurse.
where we talk about things that people don't talk about to bring you
That's
hope
right.
and inspiration for growth and healing.
Yes.
All right.
I paid too dirty for your hit yesterday. I always pay. Although it's not often somebody hits me for $7,000. Sit down.
I don't want to sit. I want my money.
Too dirty will be here in a few minutes to make us dead now. In the meantime, I'm gonna sell you a house. Go on, sit down.
Our program is People in Jazz, and today our man in jazz is Wes Montgomery.
Check it out.
Twitch channel. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and we have a jam-packed show for you on what we call Medicinal Mondays. That's when we talk about cannabis, the plant, as a medicine. And we always welcome in our favorite CEO from the cannabinoid medicine world. Her name is Alyssa Merrill, and she'll be joining us in just a little bit. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is tell you about the rest of the show, because Alyssa and I talked to Mara Gordon. And Mara Gordon is the head of AuntZeldas.org, and that is a cannabinoid medicine site. And you will find Mara Gordon's story there. Now, perhaps you haven't heard of Mara Gordon. Let me tell you a little bit about her, because it was in 2013, 7 years ago, that she started to study the cannabis plant and extract those magical cannabinoids and turn them into medicine. She then started to work with people who were desperate to find help after Western medicine just didn't work for them. And she was able to work with young parents of young children, and anyone who really needed to use an alternative medicine to what then, of course, was being used on a regular basis to treat ailments like chronic pain, like cancer and chemotherapy. And she has worked miracles. In fact, something both Alyssa and I found out after talking with Mara Gordon today is the fact that she's actually worked with about 10,000 patients over the last 7 years or so. Years or so, he said. You know, this is why I don't work with a teleprompter, because I just can't read any. I need to read. Anyway, so we will be talking with Mara Gordon about that from AuntZeldas.org. She is also featured in a documentary movie called Weed the People, and that you can find on YouTube. Of course, don't go there now, because we want you to watch this live stream and hopefully listen to the interview that we have with Mara Gordon in about 25 minutes or so. In the beginning, what we do of this cannabis chat is, first of all, we'll always encourage you to chat with us in our chat room. And if there are any questions out there that I could answer for you, I'd be happy to do that if those chats come in. In the meantime, I'm actually going to look at the news of the day, and there's a very interesting story in cannabis news today coming out of California, and it has to do with the banking industry. Now, if anybody follows cannabis news, you understand that if you are in the cannabis business, or you work with people who are paying you that are in the cannabis business, like a ancillary company like Pro Cannabis Media, for instance, a container company, anybody who does business in the cannabis community of businesses, you can't do banking in the United States. Or if you do, it's going to cost you a big, hefty monthly fee. So needless to say, there's not a lot of competition. There's only a few banks here in Massachusetts that do business with the cannabis industry. And sure enough, most of them charge very big fees. You might even call them exorbitant fees. But they are fees. And the reason why they're so expensive is banks are fearful of the federal government coming down on them looking for fraud and money laundering. And after all, this is still a federally illegal substance. However, there are some independent banks in each individual state that will do banking with the cannabis industry. And now in California, the governor is involved to the point where he actually signed a bill that removes penalties for banks that work with cannabis companies. That's a huge win for cannabis advocacy, and obviously in the state of California, a very mature market. Pretty sure they've had medicinal marijuana on the books since the mid-90s, 96, I believe. And of course, in the last year, they've become an adult use recreational friendly state. And now, national banks are unlikely to flood in, as I just explained to you why. And however, you can certainly see this as an opportunity for independent banks, and every state has independent banks, to get involved with the cannabis industry and create an opportunity for them to work with cannabis companies, not just the ones that touch the plant and that are licensed as growers or dispensaries, but also those ancillary businesses who work in with those people in the business. Okay, now, sure enough, because Mara Gordon is in California, it turns out that she's actually on the board of a credit union. That's where we at Pro Cannabis Media do our business, not in a California credit union and not even one in Massachusetts. We work with Greenwood Credit Union out of Warwick, Rhode Island. So with that being said, I did talk with Mara Gordon today about this significant change in the California cannabis community. Here's what she had to say.
Well, just to kind of add another little thing is I'm on the board of directors and I'm a director of North Bay Credit Union. And we've been giving money, or we've been working with cannabis. We've been doing this for almost 3 years now, that we've been banking cannabis businesses. And they brought me in on that board because they wanted to have somebody who understood cannabis and understood how to look at a business and see if they were full of crap or what they said actually was legitimate, right? Because they didn't even know enough to know what they didn't know at the time. Right. So we've taken so much money off the streets already. And so we've already been banking in California for quite a long time. It's just for it to be getting where the governor is supporting it and things like that, it's another story. Anybody that has federal oversight or gets money back and forth, like the FDIC and things like that, they're going to have to be careful how they do that, because they can get shut down and have, I personally am liable the same way that the other officers in the bank are. We're liable for suspicious activity if we recognize it and we don't do anything about it, right? So there's it's not for the weak of heart to take on banking. I'll tell you that, not at all. But I think it's going to encourage different types of investors, knowing that banking is possible. It also increases this caliber of employee that you can attract, because they know they're going to be able to put their paycheck in the bank and maybe get a car loan and be honest and authentic and live in the light instead of living in the dark and hiding who they are and what they do. It legitimizes us and elevates us as a legitimate business when we can actually bank.
All right, the entirety of that interview with Mara Gordon will be at approximately 15 minutes from now, about 4:25, after our 4:20 break. Okay, that'll be coming up. And I really do recommend it. This woman, to call her an angel might actually be an understatement, because she has saved so many people with her ability to find the right mix of terpenes and trichomes and magical cannabis sativas and indicas. And you know what? It's a whole new world of weed out there, isn't it? She knows what she's doing with it. And more importantly, she is changing people's lives and saving people's lives out there in California. And I definitely recommend that interview. A little bit later on, we'll be talking with Mandy Lyle. That'll be at about 5:15 or so, which would be about an hour from now. And Alyssa Merrill will be joining us, not in studio, but from her home studio. And she'll be joining us on that interview as well. Alyssa Merrill is the CEO of flowerandtonic.com. And anytime I need a opinion or a test result or just some insight on the CBD industry, I go to Alyssa Merrill. She's passionate about it. She studies it. She gets every product that she lists on her site tested and reviewed. And that's where I would go if I were looking for a CBD product. And in fact, I've sent plenty of my friends to flowerandtonic.com just because of that. Now, we talked a little bit about the Governor, Gavin Newsom from California, and what he's done now to open up some state banks for the cannabis communities. This all comes from our friends out in LA at Weed Week, and I think it might be weedweek.com. All I know is they put out a pretty nice, pretty in-depth 10 stories a week about cannabis, and you can subscribe to their newsletter, and I think they have something like 10,000 subscribers, so it's a pretty decent resource to use. Now, they did come out and endorse Joe Biden for president this week. I just thought I'd throw that in there. As it says right here, and this is definitely the Weed Week editorial staff, the former vice president wasn't the Democrat cannabis wanted. He's one of the relatively few prominent figures in the party who hasn't endorsed legalization. However, he supports policies that would benefit the industry, help to mitigate the injustices of the war on drugs, and accelerate med research. Man, I'm having trouble reading today, huh? These goals have largely gone ignored under the current administration. And certainly enough, that is also a very interesting dynamic because, as you might have heard, our president is still fighting COVID. At last check, he was still hospitalized. I have not seen the news today outside of my little fiefdom here at Pro Cannabis Media. I don't know if he's still in the hospital or not in the hospital. We sure know that he took a tour of Washington, D.C. Yesterday just to wave and show everybody that he's still doing well and he's improving. So we certainly support him getting healthy so he can get back on that campaign trail, because we really do expect some more developments in the next 30 days. No one expected that there would be a COVID outbreak in the White House during this re-election campaign, but that's a fact that happened. And of course, everyone in Washington, D.C. is concerned about that now and is dealing with that. I will tell you that about, over a year ago, I was in Jamaica for Cannex 2019. And I sat down, got to meet Steve D'Angelo, the founder of the Last Prisoner Project. And we sat down and we talked a little bit for the first time. And it was interesting. I just looked back at that interview again. And I was fearful at that time that in September or October of 2020, President Trump would actually make an administrative call to the Department of Justice and deschedule cannabis in order to get himself reelected. It was a theory I had put out there, and after hearing Steve D'Angelo talk that day, I realized it didn't take an act of Congress. It actually could be an administrative phone call that the president can make to the Department of Justice to deschedule cannabis. And needless to say, that might, I don't know if it will sway the election. We don't know if that'll even will be a tactic employed by President Trump. But you can't put anything by this guy, that's for sure. But here's what Steve D'Angelo had to say at that time about this very issue.
My biggest fear is he's going to use that as a political ploy to get votes in September, October 2020. Where do you stand on that?
Well, look, I think that I don't think that Trump is going to expend any political capital to advance cannabis reform. But I think that if Congress passes a law and it goes to his desk, he's going to sign it. And if he signs that law, I'm going to praise him for signing it, just like I'm going to praise anybody for signing a Cannabis Reform Act. Would I vote for him? No. There's a lot of Democratic candidates that I'm not willing to vote for, too, including the front runner, right? So, I really am. I'm a one-issue guy. I care more about this issue than I do anything else. And I will vote for the presidential candidate that, number one, takes the strongest reform position, and number two, that I can trust the most to actually follow through on that position when they get elected.
There you go. I like that. That's Vote Pro Pot. There's a podcast in Washington, D.C. I'm giving them a shameless plug that does that. And that's where they started. And I know that's what drives them too. So.
And of course, you can see the Vote Pro podcast on our live streams that follow our live in studio productions here at Pro Cannabis Media. One more news item. States will have another year to develop their hemp programs as the U.S. Department of Agriculture extended its pilot program for the now federally legal crop. And I put my little quotation fingers up because, as you know, what's going on with hemp in this country is that the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the DEA, and the FDA are all pointing fingers at each other saying, no, this is your responsibility, this is your responsibility, this is your responsibility. And nobody wants to take responsibility for growing hemp, which could have such an impact positively on our carbon footprint, because you can make houses out of hemp, you can make concrete with hempcrete, you could make clothes with hemp, and it's all environmentally friendly because, after all, you grow hemp in the ground, okay, because that's what you do. All right, and something we talked about on Weed Talk News last week was the fact that the Colorado governor, Jared Polis, has now pardoned nearly 3,000 offenders who have been convicted of possessing an ounce or less of cannabis in Colorado. And it's really another good thing, another part of the green movement, the green rush movement towards legalization, or at least decriminalization, over the next few months. And we've been talking about this for many, many months here on this show, on our variety of podcasts, whether it's Weed Talk with Kurt Dalton from Cannabis.net, or any of our podcasts that we've done over the last 6 to 10 months or so. Now, we're getting closer and closer to that magical time of 420. And of course, this is when I get to talk a little bit about 420 and where that cannabis code came from. Sure enough, it was a bunch of guys from the San Rafael, California area who used to meet at 20 past 4 at the Louis Pasteur statue after school, and they would meet there and they would catch an afternoon buzz. And then law enforcement would then turn that into the call, people, 420, there's a 420 going on at the corner of blank and blank and such and such and such and such. That meant public consumption of cannabis. That was the call for 420. The community now and the culture has embraced that number and that time as an opportunity. It's kind of like siesta in Europe, where they take a break in the middle of the afternoon, everybody hangs out and has an hors d'oeuvre and, that sort of thing. But it is 420. It's the time to take a break from your life and enjoy some of the benefits of cannabis. Now, in 1971, it happens to coincide with the exact year that I first partake in cannabis as an 8th grader. And this is another reason why I share with the audience a playing of a song that had the same kind of feeling for my group as the 420 and the Waldo's gang did out in San Rafael. The song was Shanty by Jonathan Edwards. He's a New Hampshire native, and sure enough, he played this song at a Portsmouth radio station. It's on YouTube, and we are waving the flag, the Shanty flag, if you will, on 420, just to kind of balance the two coasts. You know what I'm saying? In 420 in California, you had the Waldos. We had Shanty in New England, and it used to be played on the radio at on a Cambridge alternative rock station called WCAS back in the day. And that's what I think of when I think of 420. So we're going to play Jonathan Edwards. We'll come back and we'll introduce the interview with Mara Gordon. Don't go away.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just you know, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car, I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean, I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us.
Hey, Jimmy Young, in the early foliage in the weeds this week. We've got Rye Russell from Weed Buds Radio. He's our main man. This guy went from plastics to drive-in movie theaters to weed. Does that make any sense? I don't think so. But Rye Russell, he makes sense on In the Weeds with Jimmy Young this week.
Have you ever heard of a CBD bath bomb, Rye?
Absolutely. I have been buying bath bombs for my grandmother and my sister for years.
And a reminder that that interview with Rye Russell from In the Weeds will be coming up following our live in studio stream at 6 p.m., which is about an hour and 5 minutes. Excuse me, math was never my best subject. An hour and 35 minutes from now will be that interview with Rye Russell. I think you'll enjoy it. And we'll also have last week's Weed Talk News right after that. It's been the Rye Russell hour, basically between 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. on the East Coast on Pro Cannabis Media this week. One more news item before we get to the interview with Mara Gordon. This comes also from our friends at Marijuana Moment and Weed Week. In 2019, the total number of arrests for cannabis declined for the first time in 4 years. Now, when I tell you the total number of arrests that declined was still 545,000 arrests, okay? And that total number of arrests is bigger than the violent arrests by 10%. It makes absolutely no sense anymore to have these people in jail. They all need to be expunged. That's what the Last Prisoner Project is all about. That's why we support Steve and Andrew D'Angelo for the cause of trying to get those records expunged as quickly as possible and move forward with progress socially. Decriminalizing cannabis is what we're going for at this point in time. Now, this is going to be what we call a special presentation of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young, Alyssa Merrill alongside from Flower and Tonic. So sit back and enjoy our conversation with one of the premier true heroes in the medicinal cannabis community, Mara Gordon. Hi everyone, welcome to a very special edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. Today we are joined by my good friend, Alyssa Merrill, the CEO of flowerandtonic.com. She is our cannabinoid medicine expert, if you will. And speaking of cannabinoid medicine experts, we're also very happy to be joined by Mara Gordon, coming in from California. So Mara, first of all, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And as I mentioned to you in our little remarks before, I actually watched the Weed the People movie for the third time today. Happy to find it on YouTube and available, because the first time I was able to see it, it was part of a Education Foundation special showing. That was a couple years ago, I believe, when it first came out. Can you give a little bit of a background on exactly how that movie came about and how you got involved with it? Because I believe it was like a 5 or 6 year endeavor, correct?
Yes, it was quite a commitment. Initially, back, I would say it was like 2012, 2013, I had been asked to participate in a lot of documentaries. And there are several out there that have little snippets and pieces of me here and there. But I never was willing to really jump in and be part of one, because I felt like all of the teams that had approached me already had decided what the conclusion was going to be, and they were just looking for people to participate in it to prove their point. Like, in other words, cannabis should be legal for everybody in the world at all times, so we're going to push that thing and we're going to bring a bunch of people in and we're going to create this dialogue. Well, that to me is not a documentary. That's a commercial. So that didn't appeal to me. When Ricki Lake, the talk show host, when her movie star and everything else, when her late husband, Christian Evans, approached me about participating in this documentary that they were starting, I, of course, was saying no. And he's like, just at least come and meet Ricki and see what, and let us talk to you. And initially it was a little girl that had heard Ricki or become a uber fan of Ricki when she was on Dancing with the Stars. And this little girl had a very rare medical condition that was not being well addressed by traditional medicine. And they had talked about using cannabis. And so they were looking for a cannabis, somebody who was expert in making medicine and dosing and all these things. And that led them to me. Very quickly, the little girl's mom got snake bit and decided not to do it, moved out of state with the little girl. And so we had already been filming. We already had this stuff in the can. And then interestingly, I was actually in St. Louis, Missouri, sitting Shiva for my sister who died of cancer when I got a emergency text message from Abby Epstein, who was the producer, the director of the film, saying there's this 8-month-old baby with cancer. We need your help. You need to come help her. So I approached my family and I said, you know, we're always about the living and not the dead. And so how do you guys feel about me leaving early during Shiva to go and take care of this baby? And they're like, are you crazy? Of course you're going to go take care of this baby. So that's what I did. I left St. Louis and I flew back to to California, and I went down to LA. And you see in the film, the first time that we actually meet in person, I bring her the medicine to start, you know, I give her the baby medicine. So that's how it all started.
And how many do you think you've saved, Mara, over the last few years or so, which is an amazing thing to be doing God's work like that?
You know, I don't know that I saved anybody. I think the medicine is pretty powerful. We have treated over 10,000 patients, and a lot of them, a significant amount of them, cancer. And I can say that based upon our data, the longevity and the quality of life of many of these people is far improved by using our medicine and our dosing protocols. You know, would it have been just as good on something else? I have no idea. But when somebody normally lives 22 months after a diagnosis and they're talking to me 7, 8, 9 years later and they're still alive, I feel pretty good about that.
You absolutely should. I'm sure the word angel has been thrown out there a few times, and I think you qualify for sure. Alyssa?
Well, certainly in modesty, because I've had the pleasure of meeting Mara a little over a year ago at a cannabinoid conference where she was one of the keynote speakers, and that conference just opened my eyes to the farm, you know, truly that what I always believed, that this was medicine and pharmaceutical level medicine. But modesty is certainly part of who you are, Mara, because I didn't even know after all this time knowing you, 10,000 patients, that was news to me. That's amazing. So, and can you share a little bit about, you know, collecting the data and how I feel like you really were one of the only people attempting to go there and get the research and make it an actual potential pharmaceutical product.
Well, I appreciate your kind words, Alyssa, a lot. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours.
We all are.
Well, why not? I mean, she's amazing.
Yes.
So one of the things that I think that I bring to this, just to address the modesty thing for a minute, it's very important to me that everything about my organizations, and even though using the word everything is contraindicated, is we like to say that we're hyperbole free. And by remaining hyperbole free, I don't buy my own press. You know, there've been a lot of things written about me and a lot of things that I was in a thing the other day and a guy holds up, it was a Zoom meeting and there's like 25 people on there, and he holds up to get my attention, and he holds up a piece of paper and he's written hero on it, you know, and it's like, you know, you're only as good until the next thing that comes out that destroys everything. You never know, you know, you never know. And I've been I had a single focus. I've kept that focus all these years. And I think that's gotten to me where I am. I haven't been distracted by every shiny object out there. So when I first came to cannabis and was utilizing it or trying to utilize it to deal with mine and my own husband's health conditions and issues, what really astounded me was the lack of transparency and data and understanding around what the products were and how we were supposed to use them. Now, I'm a process engineer by training. And so I look at this and I'm like, okay, you're giving me, and I've told this story a million times, a lot of times, you have like a Rice Krispies treat wrapped in cellophane that somebody obviously made in their home kitchen. it's got masking tape across it, and it has in a Sharpie 5 to 20. And that's the only thing that's on the thing. And you're telling me, young bud tender you, that this is medicine, and how am I supposed to take it, and how do I know? And why would you give me junk food to take before bed with sugar? I mean, it's like nothing about it made sense. So I said, you know what, I'm going to figure out this dosing thing. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out how to treat different diseases and how to know how much to take and how to do it consistently, because I have no interest in cannabis becoming my lifestyle. You know, I'm not burning my bra and wearing tie-dye and getting dreads or all the stereotypes that I brought to this a decade ago. Of course, obviously I've evolved, or I hope I've evolved since then in my understanding and acceptance. But that was where I was. And it was like, I just want to take my medicine and go about my life. And I realized I am so representative of the vast majority of people. You know, everyone that was using cannabis at that point was an early adopter. Right. They were people that, you know, they were outside the norm. So I couldn't focus on the norm. I had to focus on what was the need. And the need was well understood, lab tested, accurately dosed medicines with profiles to treat different diseases. So that's where I put all my focus. And that's what I've been doing. I mean, I've had more people come to me. It's crazy with, you know, oh, you should come out with this, and you need a vape pen, and you need whatever. And the whole idea of Aunt Zelda's was all about making medicine that I understood, so that when we were treating patients, the data we got back about it was empirical data. And we've done that now for a decade.
I remember in the movie you were actually taking handwritten notes, and that's so old school, and it's something I also respect quite a bit, because I still do my chicken scratch notes too. But as an engineer, you know, if I remember, you come from the University of Texas system, am I right?
I'm from University of North Texas, but yeah, Texas system, yeah, same.
So, you know, you learned a little bit about software engineering, I'm guessing, at some point, and now you've incorporated that, and actually keeping track of dosing and consumption is what a lot of educators talk about now when they start working with people. Don't just take any old strain, do some research, find out what the strain is about and what perhaps impact it might have on your body, even though I think everybody knows every body is different. So the challenges that you faced, especially in the beginning where you were pioneering this titration and dosing, to me is amazing. And I'm guessing you took meticulous notes too, didn't you?
But I mean, I have every one of my lab books. I was using composition books, you know, the old style with the black and white blotchy on the front. And the reason for that is because the pages are sewn so that you don't have to worry about a page falling out. So I've been using those throughout my entire career, even when I was in, you know, my background was in technology and, you know, very complex systems, especially when I specialized bringing together legacy systems and making things that don't match. And that's kind of what cannabis is, if you think about it in a lot of ways. But yes, taking meticulous notes. And then eventually, I think it was like 2014, something like that, actually built our software platform that doctors have been using and nurses have been using to not only be able to make a correct dosing recommendation to a patient by seeing what all has worked in those areas. For example, patient comes to a doctor and says, I have ER/PR positive breast cancer, I'm stage 3, and I'm 52 years old. What should I use? Well, the physician can go through the data around who we've treated in the 50 to 55 or, you know, 45 to 50, whatever they want to do. They can pick that range of patients, see the de-identified data, and find out where to start. It's like you said, it's all different and everybody's different. But I had a cardiac procedure 2 weeks ago today. that was not successful. And so the doctor wants to start me on a pharmaceutical. And I researched it. I talked to our doctors to make sure that they're okay with me starting on it. And I could have taken verbatim what this cardiologist was saying to me and apply it to cannabis. He's like, you have to be patient with me. It's going to take a while to figure out the right dose. This might not be the right drug. And I'm like, why is that acceptable in pharmaceuticals, but not acceptable in cannabinoids? Mm-hmm. It's the identical discussion. So it's of us normalizing cannabis to be is accepted and non-demonized by making it where doctors feel comfortable because they have data. So yeah, I've taken copious notes, and all those scribbles that were in my books have all gone into the system. Yeah.
I wish I had someone to do that with my notes, but I was on my way here. I drove by the New England School for Autism, and that's what I think really excites me to know that there have been. I used to sell Ritalin, and that was really the only alternative for kids were stimulants. So. What is the most, is obviously that's an area you focused on. Can you just talk to me a little bit more about, there really hasn't been a treatment option. I'd love to hear more about what you've created and how patients respond differently, what you're seeing clinically in some of those patients.
And you're talking about autism.
Yeah. Have you?
I don't really feel that I'm as qualified to answer all of that. I can talk to it from a corporate-y kind of discussion and some of the science. What happened was we did an observational trial at CHOPS in Philadelphia, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, on autism. And at the same time, we began conversations with Illyra Healthcare and the Hope product that they were developing. And we thought, we have all this expertise over here in trialing and all this stuff. Let's go ahead and bring them together. And we ended up merging and becoming Zelira Therapeutics instead of Zelda Therapeutics. All of this separate from Aunt Zelda's, but Zelda Therapeutics and Illyra Healthcare. So the autism, I mean, I could talk a little bit about the fact that we didn't really have anybody that it didn't work for. There were negligent or negligible negative side effects or anything like that. And it worked. We already know it works. And that's the beautiful thing about cannabis is we are able to now trial things that people have been using on their own for years and years and years. One thing we did find out though, is you got to have THC. You absolutely have got to have THC. I think that and this is maybe a separate entire conversation, but the travesty of the CBD hemp industry is criminal. And I think we're going to look back at this historically at the way that they are hurting patients with this model. It's disgusting to me. And the only one that wins are the corporate bottom line. The patients certainly don't win. And I think with autism in particular and seizure disorders, which often, by the way, a lot of people with autism also have seizure disorders. Mm-hmm. You cannot just put them on CBD in most cases without THC and have it be effective. So it's got to have the whole plant profile in there.
Okay. You had something to follow, didn't you? I have one if you don't.
Yes, no, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'm guessing that as your reputation was building, you were getting more and more accepted by the medical community, or were you always trying to prove yourself to the medical community?
I've tried the best I can to keep myself out of it from the standpoint that the science speaks for itself. Because I've joked around many times and I've said, I'm not a doctor and I don't even play one on TV. I'm not a doctor. Everything I'm doing is about empowering doctors to take better care of their patients, right? So by approaching it that way, I think a lot of people that I've witnessed in the cannabis space over this last decade, I've often heard, and then there's one line in We the People that I cringe at when I hear, and that is that we can't practice medicine. That's not our, we don't have the education, we don't have the credentials, and it's wrong, it's immoral, and it's illegal, right? But we can do no harm by giving people what the data is showing is working and how it's working, but educate doctors. I've had more doctors come to me over the years begging to work with me, begging me to have access to the data, you know, show me how you do it, teach me what you do. And that's one of the reasons that I have been getting on airplanes all the years, is to teach doctors. That's why I was at the conference where I met with Alyssa, was because they're getting the wrong messaging and they need to hear what's actually working from the ground level and from studies. But there are a tremendous number of doctors that resent me. And you know what? That's about them. That's not about me. So I'm just going to keep on doing what I do. And some will love me, some will hate me, and I'll focus on the ones that love me.
Is that a Western medicine versus Eastern medicine kind of battle that is always ongoing in the medical community? Because I certainly recognize the strengths of the plant diet that's out there now, the vegan that are out there, and I see the benefits to that. And I'm starting to see more and more respect for plant medicine, and cannabis is the biggest part of that.
I think that the way that medical education has been taught over the last 80, 100 years has done a terrible disservice to doctors themselves in their education. And then as a result, what patients have been then left having to deal with as a result. Doctors used to have to be much more active in their treatment of patients, and it's become very mechanical from the standpoint that you have this disease, you give them this medicine, you give them this dose, it doesn't work, you then give them that one. If that doesn't work, then you give them that one. We have all the subspecialization in medicine that has been, it's ridiculous, where doctors are forgetting how to actually practice medicine, how to listen and do a diagnostic. I do believe that COVID and going to virtual is going to force doctors to actually dialogue with their patients in a way to ask them the right kind of questions, to get the right kind of information to make better recommendations. But the medical community is used to this single molecule as if it's the way and the path and the light. And the reality is it's a blip in medicine. It's a blip. It's less than, it's a 100-year blip compared to thousands of years of treating patients, utilizing whole plant, utilizing other sorts of breathing, the breath therapy. I mean, reading, if you ever read the book Breath, I mean, it's phenomenal on how many different things and what happens at a cellular level. Medical, I mean, you have 10 minutes in an exam room, you boom, 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 you got to get them that pharmaceutical, you got to get that off to the pharmacy before you leave the room or never gets to get done. That's Western medicine. And that's what we've co-signed because of big pharma and the insurance industry. Get them in, get them out, get them treated, boom, done. And that's not the approach to Ayurvedic or Eastern medicine or in other forms.
I always use the example, I have an amazing mom, and she would do anything for me, and she did not breastfeed. And she said that I was born in '74, and she said that you only breastfed if you couldn't afford formula. And today, I mean, that is certainly not the case. So I am hopeful that with the science, I feel like I know, actually, I can say that doctors at major hospitals, like the information as you're presenting it, it's credible and it's enough to offer patients confidently a safe alternative. So I really do see things shifting. I hope I'm not crazy, but yeah, to formula now is, you know, a little, it's just amazing how much opinions can change, and I think you're doing a great job changing them. Thanks.
Thank you. You know, to your point, Alyssa, I like to say that when we know better, we do better. Mm-hmm. And there's no malice in the way the doctors are doing it now. They just don't know any better because that's what they're taught. Yep. And so it's up to us to give them a safe space to expand their practices and expand how they do things in a safety zone where they're not going to risk. I mean, how many times have I heard people say, I'm not going to risk my license. I'm not going to risk my license. It's all about maintaining the ability to continue doing what they're doing. And so we just have to make it where it's safe enough for them to do that. You know, if you look at plant medicine, I read something today, and it actually was the very first time that I had read this statement that I didn't necessarily believe it. And it said, nobody has ever died from an overdose of cannabis. And that's true. That is true when you think about the cannabis plant. But what's happening with all these isolates and these single molecule drugs that are coming out of cannabis? Maybe they won't overdose, but is there going to be a lethal dose? We don't know. We just don't know what happens. One of the reasons that you can't die of cannabis, obviously, is because you don't have CB1 and CB2 receptors in the brainstem, and so it doesn't repress your oxygenation and your respiratory system. But the reason people didn't die of opioid opioid overdose, you know, in the past was you couldn't eat enough poppy plants. You know, you'd get sick and puke your guts out before you ate enough to kill you. Cannabis, you can't smoke enough, eat enough, any of that in its whole form. We have no idea what's going to happen when people start making pharmaceuticals out of cannabis with a single molecule to start using indiscriminately all over the place. And like I've talked about many times, Marinol, for example, we already have it. One and done, we have it. We have single molecule THC, don't need to do any more single molecule THC. People can't stand the way it makes them feel. It's better than other drugs, but it's not very good. And if it was really great, there would be a street market and you could buy Marinol on every street corner, right? So we have to get doctors to understand putting the good of the patient needs to come before the ease of prescribing.
One of the things that has been a theme, not only in our conversation here, something Alyssa actually mentioned as well, is, and in the movie, women and mothers specifically tend to be the best advocates for their children. And I'm seeing the impact of the woman in the emerging cannabis industry as well. I'm always seeing the stories of the mother who advocates for that child. That's an inbred role that the mother plays that, you know, men can never have that. I can promise you that they will never be able to bear children. And I just think that bond, how it's transferred over to the advocacy, not just for their children, but for this plant too, to be accepted as a medicine. I'm sure you found this to be true over the last dozen years or so in your journeys.
I agree. And in fact, I'd suggest you watch the documentary, Mary Jane's Women of Weed. Yep. It was out by Wendy Borman. It's a good one. And she she went looking for one thing and found a whole different set of answers over here. But, you know, women make over 80% of the healthcare decisions in the family.
Right.
Always have, always will. Well, I don't know about always, but they certainly have for an awfully long time. That's the way the Western and Eastern, I mean, I've talked to people to help them with their family members as far as way of Siberia, you know, and China and all. I mean, it's like, this is a universal sort of statement that 80% is me. So, and one of the interesting things I have found is that women will be warriors for their family, but not warriors for themselves. So getting women to comply with their protocols is so much more complicated than it is to get them. If I tell them you have to wake up at 2:00 in the morning and you have to stand on your left foot up in the air and you have to spin around and give your kid this medicine and it's going to save them, that mother is going to set her alarm and she's going to be up there and she's going to do it. If I say you have to do this for you, well, I have to get up early. It's, you know, I got to get the kids to school. I got to, you know, it's like every excuse in the world. I think what's happening with women in the cannabis space, one of the things that I find really disappointing is when I came into this space, there were so many women that were making amazing, beautiful tinctures and topicals and all sorts of interesting products to help the people that they were helping in their like little collectives. As soon as it became more profitable and you started bringing money into the space, the money started going to the men, or the women were kicked to the side. They have a much more difficult time raising money. The focus goes to shareholder instead of to the patient. When women are driving it, and this is a huge stereotype, but you know, stereotypes are usually based in fact to a certain extent, right? Let's face it. So most women are, or the women that I've seen in this space that were in this a long time ago, it was about helping people. And that doesn't fly when you're trying to raise money. They want to know what's your exit strategy, what's going to be your ROI, what are your margins. And so we need to help these women to have the support around them so that they can continue to focus on creating things to help patients. And that's just not the way the business is designed today. A lot of time they want the woman's name on their board or on their masthead, but they don't give them any actual support. When I first started, there was, I think women were 32 or 33% of the industry, and now it's down in the low 20s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is that because the men are still controlling the capital markets?
Absolutely.
Aha. All right. I do want to get back to something you mentioned. You were pretty adamant about it too. The situation with hemp in this country and this whole CBD thing. And needless to say, when Mitch McConnell signed that farm bill in 2018, he had no idea what kind of a Pandora's box he was opening. They never did.
Yes, he did. Oh, yes, he did.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Oh, yes, he did. Look at his family. Look at what his family owns.
Aha. Gotcha.
Yes.
So he knew So he knew that he was putting money in his family, but he didn't realize the big industry that he was kind of giving not legitimacy to, but an opportunity to expand without ever really researching the impact or how the regulations were going to work. And now you've got a federal government that's in totally dysfunctional. And yeah, I don't see anything getting done in the next few weeks, let alone next few months. With the DEA pointing fingers at the FDA and the USADA, that would be the agriculture group, no one wants to take responsibility for it or regulate it. Are we ever going to see what we hope to see as far as regulations go and testing and dosing and anything like that as far as hemp and CBD goes?
Well, I'm an internal optimist. So I hope that right now we're just experiencing the pendulum effect, and that eventually everything's going to normalize and saner heads will prevail. At least that's my hope. I am such a huge proponent of hemp. I think hemp could save this planet in many ways, 100%. They have no business growing it for CBD. It should be grown for industrial purposes. It should be grown to replace oils and plastics and fibers and concrete and on and on and on and on, and the different various uses for hemp. It's crazy how, it reminds me of manna in the old, it's like, it is whatever you need it to be. The 0.3 or 0.03 or whatever the number is of the threshold for THC in it, that was some number that two guys in Canada came up with, and it got adopted. It has zero scientific basis to it. Zero. And it has caused this boom in this thing saying, oh, if there's no THC, then it's okay. And what I've been saying all along is, well, the Marijuana Tax Act, and if you look at all that, it doesn't say THC, it says marijuana. So you're playing a game with this to wink, wink, push your own industry so that you can go across state lines and not have all the limitations that we have in the cannabis space. But they're not real. They're not real differences. They're fake. They're manufactured for the purposes of getting around a law you don't like, and they're certainly not for the benefit of patients. I just think it's disgusting. I had a woman call me the other day. Excuse me. She reached out to me. She reached out to me on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, here's my email address. Send me the information about your 9-year-old daughter, right, with this rare cancer. And she said, she says, well, she's taking this CBD product, and I don't know what she should take, how much of it, and everything. I said, she's trying to explain it to me. And I said, just take a picture of the labels, so I can read it and send it to me and I'll look at it. I was so angry when I saw the picture of what they had sold her. It was, did I already tell you this, Alyssa? I don't remember.
Me. Yeah,
I was so angry. Yeah. It was a CBD vape pen refill that they had sold this mother to treat her 9-year-old child with stage 4 cancer. Something to there's no, how do you live with yourself? Where's Tikkun Olam? Where is saving the world? Where is making the world better because you were here, not just let me screw around everybody and hope they don't catch me. And that's what I feel like the hemp industry is. Now, granted, there are places in the United States, places in the world that it's the only thing that's allowed is under the ridiculous threshold of THC. But the types of products and the lack of oversight and it's just, to me, it's criminal. It's criminal because at the end of the day, it's human beings. Anything you put in or on your body should be safe and to a level that it's appropriate for you. And some of the stuff that's being made out there does not meet those thresholds.
I would say potentially dangerous, actually dangerous to many patients, and to the point where, yes, I couldn't agree with you more. It's kind of a shame, but I think it's hopefully I think we're on the verge of trying to make some improvements in the industry.
A change would be beneficial to many in so many avenues right now. Can you look into your crystal ball and see where we're going to be as far as a country, as far as legalization, as far as acceptance in 4 to 8 years?
I wish I could. I think that on one hand, the push for legalization is a little bit frightening because if you don't have a structure in place for when that happens, you're going to have the same chaos that you have in the hemp space with cannabis. And who's going to be around to pick it up? Big pharma, big alcohol. Totally going to miss the boat. So I think that we need to have our foundation in place before that happens. In California, everybody was rushing to, legalize adult use, Prop 64 passed here. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the beginning of the end. And it's precisely what has happened, is all this rush to the small market, big money, dominating the fields by people who have no understanding of what they're actually working with and who the end consumer needs to be. And if you do this at a federal level, come on. Do you really want this to be like, oh, now it's legal and it's a land race, whoever can get there first to dominate? I don't want to see that, because I think that cannabis has tremendous benefit and potential, but it also has tremendous risks if not addressed correctly. Nobody even talks about I shouldn't say nobody. Rarely do you hear about the interactions with the cytochrome P450 and the interactions with other pharmaceuticals and how, potential dangers and liver damage, especially with CBD, way more so than THC. You have liver enzymes going through the roof on certain patients because they're taking CBD at the same time they're taking their drugs. So, I hope that it's not legalized until we have a system in place to support it. Can we do that in 4 to 8 years? Absolutely, if we had the right administration with the right ethos. But regardless of what happens in a month in the election, we're still not going to have it. We're still not going to have it.
A piece of news today from California. I read that some California banks are now going to be able to actually do business in and with the cannabis industry. Now, obviously, we're still with a federal illegal substance. The federal government could come in and screw things up. But is that you're in California. You just talked about Prop 64. Is this a good thing? I think anytime you can actually do banking and you don't have to do it with cash, it's an improvement, but it's not the where-all and end-all. Is that accurate?
Well, just to kind of add another little thing is I'm on the board of directors and I'm a director of North Bay Credit Union. And we've been giving money, or we've been working with we've been doing this for almost 3 years now, that we've been banking cannabis businesses. And they brought me in on that board because they wanted to have somebody who understood cannabis and understood how to look at a business and see if they were full of crap or what they said actually was legitimate, right? Because they didn't even know enough to know what they didn't know at the time. Right. So we've taken so much money off the streets already. And so we've already been banking in California for quite a long time. It's just for it to be getting where the governor is supporting it and things like that, it's another story. Anybody that has federal oversight or gets money back and forth like the FDIC and things like that, they're going to have to be careful how they do that because they can get shut down and have, I personally am liable the same way that the other officers in the bank are. We're liable for suspicious activity if we recognize it and we don't do anything about it, right? So there's it's not for the weak of heart to take on banking. I'll tell you that, not at all. But I think it's going to encourage different types of investors, knowing that banking is possible. It also increases this caliber of employee that you can attract because they know they're going to be able to put their paycheck in the bank and maybe get a car loan and be honest and authentic and live in the light instead of living in the dark and hiding who they are and what they do. It legitimizes us and elevates us as a legitimate business when we can actually bank. So I think it's a huge step in the right direction.
There you go. And just for the record, we are in a credit union in Rhode Island after a bad experience with a bank. So we support that. Hey, tell us a little bit about Auntie Zelda's and how it's going and how people can find it and all that neat stuff.
So it's Aunt Zelda's. Aunt Zelda's is, it's interesting. I'm in California right now. And I think December, January, we'll be in South Africa and in Brazil. So I'm very excited about that. I wanted to find a place in the world where I could manufacture for export at a GMP facility. And I met these guys a few years ago, and they came and sought me out for my data initially. And then we started talking, and they were building a much bigger operation. And we realized that we were completely like-minded and decided to do this thing together. So they're licensing, it's all of our SOPs, our IP and everything that for how they're going to be manufacturing with the selected cultivar profiles as well. In California, the way that we've been right now, because I haven't really been interested in being any dispensaries because dispensaries don't match what I do, I mean, work with the patient, our doctors, think about it. Can you imagine? I'm going to give you the scenario. You go to the doctor writes a prescription for you. You go to CVS to pick it up. And when you get there, the kid at the counter goes, nah, I don't think you should take that. I think you should go and take these chewable aspirin. Well, that's the cannabis industry right there. Right. So I haven't been interested in that. What I have done is I've worked with key delivery services that do fulfillment for us. And which works differently because there's no advice from the bud tender. There's the entire transaction. We just tell them to go, this is what you're going to get and whatever. So this has also been problematic. So I've rebuilt our software platform, and Alyssa, I believe, will be bringing it to Massachusetts, the doctors there. And what we're doing is we're vetting various products in each category. For example, a transdermal patch, a set of raw cannabinoid products, the ones like mine that are the high THC and high CBD, but all from cannabis, not full spectrum. Real full spectrum, not this, not marketing full spectrum. Topicals, I mean, you name it, all these products, we vet them through their COAs where we're able to see whether they're good or not. So when a doctor makes a recommendation now to a patient, I want you to use 5 milligrams of CBD, of THC, and I want you to use 50 milligrams of CBD, and I want you to take this in the morning, and I want you to do sublingual and all that, the way that our doctors, and I want it to have beta caryophyllene in there, and I want it to have limonene. These are the way our doctors recommend. When the patient receives the recommendation from the doctor, and they look to see which products that are available or in their area, it'll only show them the products that match what the physician wants them to use. So no more bait and switch, right? It'll only show them, okay, if the doctor wants you to use a sublingual, it'll show you a sublingual that has the profile. And then once you select, it'll then give you the instructions specifically how to titrate and take it to match what the doctor wants you to use. And so we're basically automating what we've already been doing internally. So Aunt Zelda's was an R&D company, never designed to be scaled in its present form. It was always about getting the data, matching it to the products to see what was working for different diseases. Now we're ready to start making it available now that we can support it the way we're going to in our platform.
Well, that sounds exciting.
Very exciting. I've been working with some key delivery services here to do fulfillment, and it'll be set up on a recurring subscription model. Like I get a text every 75 days from CVS asking me if I want to refill my medicine. I say yes, it sends it out to me. I say no, it asks me when I want to get a reminder. We're going to be doing the same thing because cannabis should be no more complicated than taking any other medicine.
Wow, that's a great way to wrap things up, I think. Mara Gordon, you were just terrific. I can see why Alyssa has so much respect for you, and I know she's excited about having your products on Flower and Tonic too.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful, and I'm really looking forward to working with Alyssa. She also brings a tremendous amount of value to me, so I plan on learning from her as well.
Hey, we're all one big happy family here at Pro Cannabis Media, and I'm happy she's on board with us as well. Mara Gordon from Auntie Zella's, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing more from you down the road. But in the meantime, remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Cannabis Chat. In the studio, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media. That was recorded. Now I'm live again. And pretty soon we're going to reconnect with Alyssa Merrill and also Mandy Lyle. And Alyssa is there. All right, let's talk to Alyssa. Alyssa, you and I just spent a little time in studio, both on Memorex and live a few hours ago. What was the most impressive part of the talk we had with Mara Gordon? What did you think?
her modesty, and I had no idea after all, I've known her a year, how many patients she's seen, 10,000 patients. And, I wasn't even familiar with how she was recording all that information. And it's fascinating, it's all there in these composition books. And it's just the initiative she takes is really what I hope other people, I just think there's a huge opportunity in how she's gone about her business. And yeah, everything about working with Mara has been exciting, but she never ceases to amaze me and impress me. So.
And of course, she's been a keynote speaker at a variety of different conferences. I found it interesting when we talked to her a little bit about her treatment by the traditional medical community. Here's someone who's playing the role of medicine human and, working her little concoctions, but all based on anecdotal and research that she's done on real people by working with them. So to me, I love the fact that she believes that she has an obligation to educate that medical community. And I know you are pretty close with a lot of people in that medical community too. And they should be craving information, but in many times they believe they know everything because they're doctors and they have big egos, don't they?
You know what? That's the other area where Mara always impresses me, because I think that doctors are just limited, like they're taught about indications in the pharmaceutical industry. Like the language we're speaking is so foreign from what they've been taught. And I could go on forever about this, but the indications that go along with a lot of the products that people use in the pharmaceutical industry it dictates so much. And I don't think a lot of people can have given, there hasn't been information that I could bring to a doctor over at MGH until Mara, really. Like, she's really given me what I need to make this credible. It doesn't have to necessarily be an FDA approved study for a doctor to give it the thumbs up, but it has to have some science behind it. And that's what Mara's brought to the table. So it's.
And there never ceases to be enough science out there to prove that this is truly a medicine plant, a medicinal plant. And even, it's interesting, I found this out recently, even those who are going into the adult use recreational stores and dispensaries, they're saying they use it medicinally too. It helps them to sleep. It helps them to deal with their pain, their anxiety, or whatever, even though they've never gone out and got their medical card.
Right.
Are you finding that?
Oh my gosh, it's like so frustrating. I'm so tired of the words medical and rec, because my experience from anyone I've spoken to entering a dispensary is they are using it for, whether it be a headache in place of Tylenol or in place of Ambien or, Tylenol PM, whatever it might be. People aren't aware of how easy it is to get your medical card. It's not that you have to check off this huge list of criteria. People are just, they think it's a bigger deal than it is, but having your card is what makes it medical. So there are a lot of patients who are going to the rec cannabis dispensaries and getting products that they're using for medical purposes, even though they don't have a card. They just think that getting a card is this challenging thing. And actually it can save a lot of money. It can help further research. There's so many benefits to getting a card. But yeah, it's unfortunately kind of, I think, sent some of the wrong information and data back to the industry. Like, that everyone just wants a rec. And I think that there's a huge opportunity in a lot of these medical products. So.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to the stigma, and even Mara talked about this as well, that many people for 80 years have been conditioned about all the negatives that they hear about this substance. And it takes a desperate mother or parent to turn to the cannabis plant as the last resort for treatment, whether that be for any cancer treatments. You know, I don't know about you, but anytime my kid got hurt when he was younger, I felt his pain. I think that's true for every parent. So that when you see your child in pain, as a parent, someone who cares for them unconditionally, you want to help them, give them something to take away their pain, and having access to a medicinal plant that can do that seems to me is I would welcome it more than going to see the doctor and getting on any kind of opioid or prescription drugs or whatever Western medicine has to offer, because Western medicine goes after symptoms and Eastern medicine looks for the cause. And a lot of times that means an imbalance in your system when it comes to neurotransmitters and your pain threshold. And I don't know, you're a parent. I know you are. In fact, I think you have a special birthday you're celebrating in your house today.
My
Is that
oldest is
accurate?
12 today. But yeah, actually what got me started in this industry was my middle daughter was playing soccer. She was 4, and there was a little girl on her soccer team who was diagnosed with brain cancer. And watching, like, and you know, the mom was so good at expressing her words and sadly expressing what she was going through. And it was at that same time I had gotten my medical card for my own sleep issues. And I just knew that there was like science. I knew that there were products that could help this little girl, and they're not there. And unfortunately, again, one of the things about Maura that sets us apart is that she wants to share what she's learned. And there are too many people in this industry who think they have this something that no one else has ever thought about. Like, I can't even tell you how many people have the next latest and greatest thing that I've already heard 5 or 6 times before, you know, from other innovators or other brands. So it's people are keeping some of this data and some of their findings too close to them, I think, and not sharing. And it's holding the industry back in a lot of ways, in my opinion.
Yeah. And just a reminder, we actually are waiting to welcome in Mandy Lyle, who has a line of topicals, I believe. Alyssa, is that accurate? Is that what she's got?
Skincare. She's got, so I think that was another thing that got me excited when I started in this industry. I used to work in the cosmeceutical area, and I know a good skincare product, and hers are exceptional. So yeah, I mean, I saw some before and after she was posting, and we connected, and yeah, she's just setting the bar very high.
Yeah. Are we trying to effort that cell phone that I had on my email? Isabel, Dan, anybody? Bueller?
Are we calling in
It's
Mandy?
It's the wrong email I gave you? Oh, so on my apps or whatever, there's a Gmail app that connects you with the proper email. And that's on the iPhone too. Thank you. Sorry about that. But it's in there. I know that her cell was in there because it was in there this afternoon. I should have printed that out. But anyway, let's get back. Alyssa and I could probably talk for another 15, 20 minutes if we had to. I think that we both have the gift of gab here.
I don't know what
what's
you're
the biggest frustration for you as someone who has started this company, flowerandtonic.com? What's the biggest frustration for you when it comes to these products? And I think even Mara brought out one story in particular that really, you could tell, really got her mad.
Yeah, no, I mean, she texted me and she was like, people are ruining the industry. It really, it's so sad to see. I've tested so many products. I lab test all the products myself. And I think that's another thing that drew Mara and I together, because we've seen I've seen
Kindred
molded
spirits.
products. I've seen products that have no seal. I mean, you name it, the smell of some of these products. And sadly, it's not necessarily like, I've worked with some people who have run amazingly successful skincare brands, but when they try to add CBD or cannabis, they don't know what they're asking for. They don't know what they're getting. So when they're getting like the raw product, the raw ingredient to add being CBD, I can give you one example. There was a case where it was the raw form of CBD. We've talked about the CBD, probably like a CBDA. I don't really know what it was, but at the end of the day, it molded. Like, I could smell that mold and mildew. So they don't, there's so little guidance on how to make a good product. And they're very far and few between, to the point where I haven't really been, I don't know, I've held back on recommending a lot of these products because there are way more bad products out there than good. So when you find the good ones, it's certainly exciting. And Mandy is a great example of a skincare product that I could bring to a dermatologist in Boston comfortably, So
Gotcha.
have you ever had eczema around your eyes?
Eczema around my eyes? No, I've had it in other body parts, elbows and, ankles and places like that.
Eczema is horrible. It's really an uncomfortable, aggravating. And I know so many people who are suffering from it, and you don't really have a lot of options. You have a hydrocortisone, you have a steroid, but there's not a lot of other options. And to be something about the way that the plant-based skincare products work compared to, I think, traditional skincare, I believe, and I'd love to talk to Mandy about this, I believe what sets them apart is these terpenes, which, you and I talk about a lot, help deliver a lot of these products into the skin in a way that traditional pharmaceuticals just can't. So I think that there's a higher level of efficacy. A lot of it's still unknown, but, I've tried some skincare products that are horrible, or not horrible, they're just fine. I definitely could say that there's a clinically significant difference in a lot of the products that Mandy makes. So, and she came from the esthetician world, a lot of people are just, I don't even know the exact number right now, but the majority of brands, I should say, are white labeling, which is fine. They're taking do you know what white label means?
Yes.
You familiar with this? Yes, you are. But anyone else is not, they're taking, an already made product and putting their name on it. And that's what a lot of the industry is full of, these white label products. So very few products really set the standard and set themselves apart. But when you find them, it's like this, hooray, and they have, actual dosing information and, things that Maura was alluding to, you can depend on it to actually work. So actually I used, and then this is all stuff too. Let me just say, coming from the pharmaceutical industry, I was I don't want to say anti plant-based, or I didn't believe in a lot of this stuff. I wasn't impressed by the way the naturopaths or the acupuncture people were kind of selling themselves. I just didn't see the science of it. So when you find someone who does explain the science and explains why they're combining certain products, in the serum, she's mixing different botanical ingredients, and people who really understand that are, again, just making products that I think outshine pharmaceuticals. So, and
do you find a lot of the topicals, which I think we're talking about now, do any of the topicals and people that you've talked to about them, and a lot of people use them, and whether it's the placebo effect or it actually does bring down inflammation in a joint, there are doctors out there who basically say there is no therapeutic research on this, but there's a ton of anecdotal research on topicals that have CBD in them. And I've always said to the doctors, but if it's for pain and I rub it on my fingers that were aching and the pain goes away, and if it is truly in between my ears and in my head that this was a placebo effect more than anything else, I don't care if there's no science behind it. If my pain goes away, I'm happy.
Well, 30% of all responses are placebo effect, whether it's over-the-counter, pharmaceutical. AARP did a study that confirmed that 30% effects are placebo. And you're absolutely right. I think there is a ton of placebo effect, but we have Healing Rose is a good example. Our friends over at Healing Rose. Yep. I believe that it's they have such a focus on terpenes. I personally believe it's the terpenes that are helping to deliver the CBD and it's not just because we were saying, like, I don't even like to say the word CBD anymore. It's almost been ruined. But it's what it's combined with that I think makes the product that, can really set it apart. So a Healing Rose has done a really nice job of mixing together some great ingredients to make, what I think is a great topical product for pain. So yeah, no, they're out there. They're just hard to find. And I feel like people are trying to put like I'm trying to think of a good, I love my analogies, but like delivery systems, are real and the cannabis industry isn't really understand, just because you put it in a gummy doesn't mean it's going to work. It's if anything, it's frustrating to see how irresponsible people can be with these products. And I've, especially now, my gosh, the world is going a little crazy. And if you're taking it for anxiety, like, shame on you if you're going to tell someone that this gummy, the gummies, some of them are amazing, but again, they have to be formulated in such a way that they're going to deliver the products into the body. And majority of the cases, that's not happening with a lot of these products. So it's sad because there are people who tried them, tried a bad product and will never go back and might go back to opioids. And that's obviously not what we want to see happening. So
getting back to Mara Gordon's, we have, what's that? A question from our chat room before I get back to Mara Gordon's talking about the entourage effect, because I definitely want to talk about THC in these CBD only products and stuff. What's our chat here?
They want you guys to discuss a little bit about Rick Simpson oil.
RSO. I didn't even realize that RSO meant Rick Simpson oil, but Rick Simpson oil is, well, you define it, Alyssa, because you're my go-to person, and then maybe we could compare that, or at least talk about RSO versus Charlotte's Web. Both are oil-based CBD products.
RSO, it's people try to copy, like there's an original RSO, and I think people try to copy it. I'm not sure who can claim what, if they're just calling it RSO, but it was basically like I think what was considered the medical version before the science is really understood. Does that make any sense? Like, so it's not a specific brand, although a lot of people use that term. I wish I could. I actually, you know what? I cannot elaborate a lot more on that because
That's okay. We both know that the Charlotte's Web oil and the Rick Simpson oil do have anecdotal history that they have been effective for many years. Now, what I understand is that some of these companies have gotten to be so big that perhaps they're not delivering the same quality oil that they were when they first started. Have you ever reviewed any of either the Charlotte's Web oil or the Rick Simpson oil on Flower and Tonic?
I try to keep my positives happy and on the positive. Charlotte's Web is a good product. I've gotten some feedback where there's been some confusion, I think, between the CBD products and the CBD and THC. There's been a little, I think now they've done a better job separating, but I think that's where this industry needs to do a better job with marketing. I feel like those have to be very, very separate. I don't appreciate when, if I was directed, my whole thing was I'm not trying to get grandmother's high, when I started this and it was still kind of taboo to talk about. People were trying to put THC products into the CBD, like thinking people would be happy if they got a little high, but no, not our, my aunts who is going to get something for, pain. So yeah, it was a little too confusing for me. And I haven't really gone back to test more recently, but I just found in the beginning, I like when brands have when they really separate their hemp-based products from their cannabis-based products. I don't, it just leads to less consumer confusion. And there was an incident where I believe it was on the shelf of Target, or online, not on the shelf, online, Target.com, one of the Charlotte's Web, but it was, the patient was actually mailed the THC version. And you know what? THC, I believe it's absolutely a valuable clinical, there's a need for it. Mara and I talked about that a lot. CBD is like, there are so many cannabinoids, but there still can be harm. I don't think I just don't think anyone unsuspecting should be afraid of getting high,
Well, again, what's happened sometimes, and I've certainly heard these stories, is people will take a CBD product thinking it has no THC in it, and then have to take a drug test through an employee or union or whatever they're in, and they end up testing positive.
Yes.
And it looks like now we're going to get Mandy on the line here, which is great. But I always wonder about that, because the entourage effect is so powerful, and everybody in cannabinoid medicine talks about you have to have a little THC, more than what hemp is defined as, in order for the CBD to work as well as you'd hope. So that's kind of a catch-22. But we have Mandy now, I believe. Hello, Mandy.
Hi, boy, what a ride. I was thinking I had so much time. I was thinking it was 5 o'clock West Coast time. So I was like, oh, I've got time to run my mother this place and this place. And now I've realized, hi.
Well, that's all right. You're here. You're here now. That's the most important thing. And I am so happy to hear you talk, because when I was reading your bio, I saw that you were from Kentucky, and that drawl kills me.
My current fiance for many years, I'm a Virgo, so I think I'm never getting married, but my fiance used to say he used to hear me talk, and now he tells me to shut up all the time, so I think you might get tired of it.
Well, that's the beginning of a very long relationship. I can attest to that. And did I hear you say you were a Virgo?
I'm a Virgo, yeah. I just had a birthday, on the 14th. So are you also a Virgo?
September 3rd, absolutely. So happy you know a fellow, and 20-year relationship and not married. I just want to throw that in there, okay? Not by my choice. Not by my choice. Not by my choice. Mandy, tell us, first of all, your story is quite compelling, and it's interesting. I want you to tell it, obviously, but it goes, I hear this a lot about women who are in the cannabis industry, and one of their parents was always a pro-cannabis person in whatever capacity. So can you relate your story and how you kind of got into this, and then you and Alyssa can talk about the lotions and potions.
Yeah. So I guess I have a history with the plant that goes way back to when I was born. My mom and dad were very young when they had me and divorced at an early age, but I watched him grow a lot of cannabis when I was in my youth, and I kept watching him go to prison for cannabis, and I kept trying to figure out, why is my dad going to prison for a plant? So it was always, blew my mind as a young kid. We're planting it. It looks like a garden. It looks just like a regular garden that my papa's planting in the back with corn, So I couldn't figure it out until later. Of course, when I got older, I realized that it was a big no-no, and that he wasn't supposed to be growing marijuana. So I've been around the plant all my life, and it's funny because I used to watch all the people go in. I used to watch all the people go into my dad's house to buy marijuana, and then I also would see the people come into my dad's house to buy prescription drugs that my dad had acquired. And sadly enough, I would always see these people, and I would say, those people that are on the pills are a mess. The people that are coming in to buy this cannabis look like they kind of got it together. So I always knew that I never wanted to go down the big pharma way or get into that mess. So I was always kind of scared of that side of the drug world. But cannabis, I never could figure out why everybody kept getting in trouble for it. So as I grew up, I ended up going into skincare when I was 20 and worked alongside a very well-known physician. He was an ear, nose, and throat facial plastic surgeon. So we did a lot of cosmetic surgeries I got to watch. We got to go all across Europe and do a lot of cool televised surgeries that he did. So I got to see a lot of the medical side of plant therapy and oils, and I got really into essential oils when I first started doing facials, because I worked with a product called Yonka out of Paris, France, and they use a lot of lavender and rosemary and thyme and geranium and cypress, and I saw how powerful those plants were. Then fast forward several years, I moved to California. My current fiance goes into the medical marijuana business. I was a nervous wreck. I made him drive me to the courthouse with him so I could believe it was really legal. So once we went into that, I started reading about, here comes CBD, and I'm like, whoa, this might be something really cool with beauty, because look at what I've watched all the other plant oils do when I get my clients away from all those chemical ingredients they were using in their everyday Clinique products and Estee Lauder products and all the different products they were using, and all the parabens. And so once I started thinking about CBD, I was like, this might be the time for me to go into skincare and take this opportunity to take the stigma that I always had been around. Everybody would say, cannabis is this, cannabis is that, and turn it into something beautiful. So that's what I ended up doing. And somehow I have created something I feel like that's bigger than me right now. And I'm watching it do things on, like Alyssa says, kind of a clinical level, which we can't make many claims. But I do have a really nice collection of before and after photos that I've been collecting, and a lot of just data here and there that's not around yet, because CBD is still so new to the beauty industry. So they say I'm disrupting skincare is what everyone says, and kind of shaking it up a little bit and moving away from that, vitamin C, vitamin E, not that it's not good, but I'm watching CBD do so much more as an antioxidant. So I've took that history of the craziness and all the prisons I visited all my life and turned it into something beautiful, and just trying to make America beautiful again.
I'm like obsessed. I texted her at the beginning of here's her product. I texted her at the beginning of COVID, and I'm like, I have no schedule. Like, there's no consistency. I am not one of those like a type A, getting dressed, putting on a bra, anything. But I put on, like, this was my ritual. Like, I couldn't go without. I've never like gone to the bottom. And let me also say, your product allows you to go to the bottom, which I like love. Like, I can get every last drop out, versus, like, to your point, like some of the Clinique, you still have to go and dig around. Like, this, I used the last drop, and I'd like, this was you're shaded all summer long. I didn't get I would say, like, it was the first summer where I didn't have like a tan, like, on my face, like even years before when I've used sunblock, which I do use sunblock, but this, her products are just amazing, and never return, right?
I haven't had any requests for any returns in the 2.5-year run. It'll be 3 years going into March since I launched. That first year, I kind of not really hid, but couldn't really do much because so many people were getting kicked off the internet for selling CBD. And so I was nervous to do a lot that first year. So I kind of tiptoed around. But a real quick story, this lady who's Scandinavian said her skin always burns, and that she got out of the shower. She put her gold serum on her face. She went outside. Her body got a real bad sunburn, but her face didn't get touched. Mm-hmm. And she asked me, does it have sunscreen in it? And of course, a lot of plant oils do have a natural sun filter, but I can't put on the bottle SPF, but I can tell her, she told me that her face usually always burnt first, and it didn't this time. So to me, that showed the free radical fighting power that CBD has, because it doesn't have an added sunscreen in the serum. So it is doing some sort of filtering against the sun. Of course, I can't claim that either, but it's just nice for me to know that the only difference between her body and her face is one had gold serum on it, the other didn't, and one burnt and one didn't. So it just shows me it's got some really cool free radical power.
Before you got on, we were talking a little bit about like I defer to you maybe for the answers, or other experts, but I'm a believer that it's the terpenes that deliver it into the skin to make it work better. And I think, yes, I mean, is there more you can expand upon? Like,
yes, I believe that. And I do believe, again, I just heard Mara talk on a TED talk from a while back, and she was talking about the terpenes and the entourage effect. It's just like this, to me, those essential oils are like the body of the car. And then when you put the CBD in, that's the motor that drives it. So it's worked, and it's mind blowing at the results that I'm getting. And I'm in shock myself that it's worked so beautifully, and that I haven't had any returns. And I talked to a girl that works at Sephora, and I was like, do y'all get a lot of returns? And she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, well, so I was just, I wanted to clarify, do people really return skincare products a lot? And she said, oh yeah. So that to me just shows that I have something that is working and is headed maybe to a different level. There may be different variations of it coming out later on. And maybe it's going to be an over-the-counter product. I'm finding that it's becoming like a really good go-to product. Somebody said they burnt themselves with a curling iron. They grabbed my serum. They burnt themselves on the grill. They grabbed my serum. So people are reaching for it like they do that Neosporin or that cortisone, and they're getting a really quick fix.
Yeah. And it smells good. Like that's another, I know this, I have, so your son is adorable, and I have to introduce him to my little TikToking 7-year-old. But we all have kids in the background during COVID times, and
it's a wild time. And I was in the car planning to have all this extra time to get home and put makeup on and get ready, and then I realized that I'm a West Coaster.
I love like that. That's your skin, first of all, without makeup on. But
44.
My daughter, what I was going to say is being around our kids more. My daughter like loves the smell, and she makes it very clear when there are products that smell like pots. She's like, "Mom, you smell like pot." It's very, it's a skincare product, but my girls love the smell of this. Like the scent is amazing. There are too many ingredients to list, but they all seem to be, I don't know, just working together.
I can name it. We have blue tansy, vetiver root, frankincense. I mean, these are oils that have been used for centuries. And just the mixture, it's just the right mix. I don't know. It's got this aphrodisiac. You crave it. It's like you just want it. I can't wait. And I'm still 3 or 4 years in. I'm in, and I'm like, I still don't want anything else. I want to get home and cleanse my face as quick as I can. I love my Filthy Face cleanser. I did not put CBD in my cleanser. I kind of felt like it was a waste of the plant, because you put it on, you wash it off.
Yeah.
So I didn't really feel like I should throw it in there, because there are a lot of people who are still on the fence about, oh, is this product going to make me fail a drug test? Am I going to get high using your serum? All the questions that you still get, because education is still so very important.
Yeah.
With this plant, because so many people it's still just so new. I mean, it's just new. But I didn't put it in the cleanser, but I crave my own product.
It's like my Myers soap. I believe that has, right? Like I started using that.
Yeah.
I need to use it. It
makes washing dishes fun.
Yeah. Yes. And it makes washing my face. Like it really does. And I think it's a testament that you haven't had returns, that people agree.
The thing with me is also I wanted it to be a simple product, because I am a mom of a 6-year-old, and we don't have times for 20 steps. And so I'm sorry, I keep getting calls. We don't have time for 20 steps to go in the bathroom and stand for 5 hours like we used to. So I like that it's simple, and I like that it absorbs nicely, and I like that men like it too, especially after shaving. They get a lot of the ingrown hairs and the redness. So men tend to like it just because it is a very unisex bottle.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love your branding. Like top to bottom, love everything about your
We got to get our buddy a bottle over there, Mr. Virgo over there. I got to get him a bottle.
I know. He's got, yes.
By the way, Mr. Virgo over here has been enjoying listening to the two women talk lotions and potions. But I do want to ask a question. You mentioned the entourage effect. And, Mara Gordon talked about this as well. But you have no THC in your lotions, correct?
I have the legal amount in the serum. It's a 0.3. It's the legal amount. So it's full spectrum, and it's the whole plant.
Yep. Okay. So,
I think that little bit in there is crucial. I would like to do a higher level THC product once I watch more of the states come on board. And I could, to me, that would be more important, the more legal it becomes. But I would like to add a little more THC for my personal bottle, maybe. But I am wanting to go in and add more CBG, because the more we're finding out about the other cannabinoids that come, CBG seems to be one that's standing out to me for inflammation. And it also seems to be, they talk about it being from the stem cell. So to me, that one seems like it's a no-brainer to add in there as well to give it an enhanced power. And that may be something that I do later on as we learn about all the different cannabinoids.
I'm just going to follow up with that. So we understand the full spectrum, 0.3%, that's hemp. Do you know what's the matter? Sorry, my director turned around and looked at me like my mic wasn't on or something. So do you know, have you experimented, and you just said, for your own products, what percent of the THC to make the CBD, CBN, CBG even more effective? Is it a 2%? Is it an 8%? Or is it just more?
Well, I'm finding that it's around 0.25 milligrams per ounce is very effective. But I have 100 milligrams in a 1 ounce bottle. So I don't know the answer to that exactly. I would have to talk to a formulator to get you an exact answer on that. But I do know that they say it's a 0.25 per ounce would give you a result that you're looking for, to give you some sort of change. But that's with the topical. I don't know if that's with a tincture or anything edible, so don't quote me on that. But as far as the beauty side of it, to get what we need is from the beauty side of it for that cell turnover, it's about a 0.25, because there is a natural form of vitamin A in there. So unlike retin A, which is very aggressive to the skin, hemp has a natural form of vitamin A that I'm watching it speed up the cell renewal process. And that's why I think the people are getting such an amazing quick result, is because they're able to speed up the cell renewal process, similar to how a snake sheds its skin. We shed just like that. And if you're not getting all those dead skin cells off, which it's impossible to get every one of them off unless they're exfoliated properly, or some sort of vitamin A is used, or a loofah, whatever, you don't want to be too rough on your face. But I think that the vitamin A coming from that hemp has been very good for helping speed up that cell renewal process and giving that fresh look, that glow, getting that dead skin off that's burying those fine lines, turning them into deep wrinkles. So that for me is what I think is what's making it work so quickly, along with, the little bit of THC in there as well, but that vitamin A content in there,
I guess,
is what I think speeding it up
and
making that good result.
A different form of vitamin A than we're used to in like the everyday products that we're using right now, or they're different. Yeah, this is where I'm a little.
Well, like with retin A, like when you use retin A, like if you get a tube of retin A from the dermatologist, it's just extremely more aggressive.
Yeah.
And they also have a chemical component in there as well, where this is a natural form, a natural vitamin A with natural oils.
Okay.
It's not got the chemical component in there, the chemical ingredient, the high amount of acid. In there, the high amount. So it's a little more gentler to our skin.
Okay.
And you're not as, with you use retin A in the summertime, it's kind of a big no-no, because it makes your skin super sensitive to the sun, where I'm finding using the serum all year long has been beneficial.
Okay.
And it doesn't make you more sensitive. If anything, it's done a protection, just like the girl who got burnt on the body, but not burnt on her face. So
do you use it over, is it something that you would recommend, like if someone, I have friends who are never going to stop using their retin A, their face could fry off, and it's just, some people are obsessed.
I would like to try to turn them onto a natural approach, because you can also thin that skin out a little more than you want to also, using that aggressive product, and you can oversensitize your skin using all these acids, the glycolic, the lactic, the tartaric. All these acids over time will cause your skin to be oversensitive, and then you're going to notice you're going to be in a bigger mess. So we have a natural barrier and we have to protect it. You can't just throw chemical on it all day long. No, it's not good.
Can I ask you a silly question? But like I think it matters. The way you apply it, like, do you have any tips for people when they're applying serums or moisturizers?
Well, I like to pump the serum in the palm of my hand, because a lot of people pump it in between their fingertips, and you'll notice that the serum will seep down in between the fingertips. So then you're wasting it. So I like to put it in the palm of my hand, rub my palms together, like my hands together real quickly, and then press it onto the skin. I always smell it first too. It's a mind, body, spirit product to me. It takes me somewhere. I love it. Like you said, the oils do something to your senses.
Yeah.
And again, oils are very antiseptic, antibacterial, anti-inflammatory already on their own. And then you just add that CBD in there, and it's just been amazing. But I do like a pressing on the face. If I have an area like my bridge of my nose used to have quite a bit of pigmentation from sun, that's where you always get burn at, I would always just put a little extra on those areas. And I use it in the morning and I use it at night, and that's it. I have a lot of people who have used this for other things. And again, we can't make claims, but I have a lady who had a horrible finger issue that looked a lot like psoriasis,
I saw that.
And in 2 days of just using it, it was like amazing. So I let a lot of those pictures speak for themselves when I post anything. And I believe collecting all this data and all these photos are what's so important, because at the end of the day, when these big companies that aren't doing anything in CBD come knocking, that's what they're going to want to see. And these pictures have been just everything for me.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. And I know that they just come to you. It's not like you're out trying to take these before and afters. People are just coming to you with some amazing results. Very hard to treat. Like I gave some to my niece the other day. She has eczema, and it's so bad, and it's around her eyes. And like, there's no way that I could be convinced that a steroid is safer than this product. I've tested it myself, and it's everything it claims it is. And I feel so comfortable giving it to my kids or my niece, especially for eczema around the eyes. It's uncomfortable, and it can become a severe problem. So it's
I'd rather go for something that I knew was 100% natural any day. From my laundry detergent, as much as I can try to get it as natural as I can, from my hand soap, everything we use every day is so important. I don't think people realize how much, even going over to the sunscreen side, when I talk about sunscreen, I went with titanium and zinc, which are your natural sunscreens, versus an oxybenzone, which is a huge no-no. And they're finding out a lot of bad things about the usage of oxybenzone, not only to mention that it's fading the coral reefs in the ocean from people wearing it and then getting in the water, and then that chemical is fading these beautiful coral reefs. They've even outlawed oxybenzone sunscreen on the Hawaii beaches. So a lot of things, ingredients, people just don't realize every day everything you use. We walk out of the house, we use 20 products before we get out of the house. And it's very important to know what you're putting on your body, and it can cause thyroid issues, hormonal issues. I mean, there's just a whole thing. You come from the pharmaceutical world, that one pill might fix something, but it might cause 10 other things to happen.
And hormones are real. That's something I've learned, and I don't think they're well addressed in the pharmaceutical industry, but endocrine receptors, I never thought that was a real thing, but you've also educated me about the list of 10. Like, I was just naive. I really thought, well, if they're selling it at Sephora or at Nordstrom, it's got to be safe, and
not always the case.
No.
They just not always the case.
And you were also working prior to this, like with a large hotel chain. She's Jimmy, she knows what she's doing. She's been formulating products for years, correct? Weren't you working with
I owned Facial Rejuvenation Center in Greenville, Kentucky for 10 years. So I've touched a lot of faces, and like I said, working alongside the doctor was taught me so much about herbs and oils and more natural approaches, and even nutrition. I mean, I'm preaching to my mom daily about nutrition, about how it's medicine. Food is medicine. You have to look at it like it's medicine. And I'm watching so many more plant-based foods come out, which is really cool, to be watching all of this. So I think I'm ready to start digging a bigger garden.
I'm not gardening, but I am going to try to.
Tempted. You're getting tempted, I'm sure.
Not, yeah. Gardening isn't ever going to be my thing.
And I had a new mask. I had a new mask come out, and the potency wasn't there. It was supposed to be at 250, and my mixer misformulated. And so we got all these masks filled and labeled. He had them all done, and then it came back at 30 milligrams and not 250. So I had sold the mask on pre-sale and had about 40 orders come through on pre-sale that few weeks that I had it. And I ended up having to redo the mask. And so instead of ditching the ones that came back at 30, I decided to give my clients each 10 masks a piece, so they were at 250, just not all in one jar, until I get the right formula. So I'm really big on testing to make sure that what my product has in it.
Yeah.
And you know that because you sent it off yourself. And I love that when you came back and said, yay, I'm like, yay, I'm glad.
Well, you'd be shocked. And I met some soccer moms, and I'm scared of recommending products that, that could potentially have THC. And yeah.
It's very important that you do that. It is very important. And I love that you did that. I love it.
Thank you. And I love that, like, we found each other, and I didn't know much about you, but then the next thing I know, you're gifting bags at celebrity events. And in February, that was pretty
for the party. And at the SLS Hotel, I did a little pop-up shop there. I did a few pop-ups before COVID happened. But Alyssa, what's been really good about what's going on with me is I don't do a lot of paid marketing. Everything that I've gotten so far in press has been free press, where people have literally tried my product. Steve Bloom just wrote an amazing article on me in the Guide to CBD. He used to write for High Times. He actually had a list of 700 women you need to know in cannabis, and it added me to it. So I offered to send him some products just because I thought, well, that was nice that he put me on the list.
Yeah.
And so I sent him the products, and he's like, what am I supposed to do with these? You know how men are. And I told him what to do, and I thought, well, he's not going to ever use that. Next thing I know, this month, the Complete Guide to CBD magazine came out and is on the shelves at Rite Aid and Walmart and everywhere. And my friend calls and says, did you know you're in this? And I said, no, who wrote it? And it was him. And so he actually indulged in the products and used it and loved it. So I was really happy about that. And that's how a lot of my press has happened. So it's been really organic, and it just feels good.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. And Maura is very much the same. She's, it's just so authentic and honest. So I
got Mara a good box on. Mara's box just got shipped to her, so she's got a nice box coming. I want her to play in some potency.
She's Benjamin Button though. She's reverse aging a little bit. It's a little unfair, but yes,
she looks great. Yeah,
agreed.
It's a THC.
maybe yes. Oh,
hi! We forgot about our friend over there. Hey,
I've been listening and we've been laughing. You two girls are having a blast. I think it was funny. We learned something. But, there's a football game on in a little while that I have to make sure I'm in front of. So I do have to end this program a little bit here. But I want to thank Mandy for making the effort. And who's your son? What's his name in the background?
You're going to die when I tell you. His name is Cushton, and we call him Cush.
I love it. Well, you tell Cush, keep smiling. He's a good kid. Alyssa, you have a birthday party to run. Go run your birthday party. You women are amazing.
Pop your popcorn.
You both are amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today here on Cannabis Chat on our Medicinal Monday show. And I thank you both for making the effort and making it happen. Alyssa, as always, a pleasure. And Mandy, nice to meet you as well.
Nice to meet you. I did this going down the road, so that's a first for me. So I'm so sorry I was on West Coast time.
All right.
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Bye, Alyssa.
Bye.
All right. So Alyssa Merrill from Flower and Tonic. I take it that those products are on Alyssa's website. Go to flowerandtonic.com. check them out, use them, review them, and then you can send Mandy a note saying, once again, these are great products. So, speaking of products, we are done for a very long Monday here at Pro Cannabis Media. We'll be back here in studio on Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. And that'll be our Professor Weed Wednesdays. It's when we guarantee you will learn something about this cannabis sativa plant. So for everybody here in the PCM family, I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media and the host of Cannabis Chat. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And stay tuned for the next edition of In the Weeds with Jimmy Young and Rye Russell. Don't go away. Welcome back to Cannabis Chat, everybody. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, and we are very happy to be joined by a friend of mine from my second favorite state in the union. That would be the great state of Maine, the Maine man himself, Rye Russell from Weed Buds. Hi, Rye. How are you?
Jimmy, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be a part of the Pro Cannabis Media team today.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully more to come on that. But let's tell everybody a little bit more about your background and how you got to create Weed Buds and how successful that little venture has been.
It's incredible. It was a journey that, for me, it was just some accountability. I was a late bloomer to the cannabis industry, and not that I would say anybody really preached too much against it in my life. I just was not really exposed to it. And so that lack of education was very much a barrier for me. And medically, I developed some health issues, and the traditional routes were unproductive. But I was still so nervous because my doctor told me that medical cannabis was something that I would have to journey down on my own. And so I used the podcast as a way, kind of infusing my media background. And I'll never forget, I called a grower. I was living in Ohio at the time. And I told them, I said, I'm going to try your product. I'm going to this dispensary. This is what I think I'm going to be trying. And if you kill me, I'm going to have this podcast and everyone's going to know about it. And I'll tell you, Jimmy, the conversation was magnificent. It was a small chuckle and he said, let's talk. What are you fearful of? What are your concerns? And he wasn't the pharmacist, but he really allowed me. And I said, man, I feel if more people could kind of have these buds around them to help them educate and to learn just about the industry and about the people that are in the industry. I think once you know those people, you might start to feel a little bit safer because they have our best interests at heart.
100%. And it's funny you mentioned education and learning. On Wednesdays on this Cannabis Chat venture that we're doing, we are dedicating our talk for the most part as an educational experience. This is where Professor Weed Wednesdays exists, and playing the role of Professor Weed will be moi, and I'll be interviewing educators, and we already have had a few of them on our first show that we've done like this, and this is only our second Professor Weed Wednesday. So I'm going to ask you a question, Rye. This was an interesting experience, how you got exposed and started to learn about the aspects of medical marijuana and using it as a medicine. What is one of the most surprising things that you have learned about your journey with cannabis as a medicine?
I think first and foremost is the clarity of my mind. That was one of the things that was really tripping me up in traditional medicine. A lot of the medication that I was on, I felt was locking me in, was locking my personality in, and my creative side that you know me for, that I love and gives me inspiration for the day. I felt like the traditional medications were pushing that down and suppressing that part of me. And I can't really explain it other than I felt like a zombie of who I was. And when I first started experimenting with cannabis, right, and if you listen to any of the old school messages, you would think that cannabis is going to turn me into a zombie. And so that was one of my fears. And when I started using medical cannabis to help me I realized it helped me socially, it helped me spiritually, it helped me psychologically, where now I feel it can open my mind, it can expand my mind. And it's weird to say unless you really can understand the experience, but rather than suppressing anything, I feel like it brings all of my emotions to the forefront, and I can process them much better than I ever could before.
You know, it's so funny how many times I've heard that very almost not word for word, but very similar experience from others who are exposed to it for the first time. And it doesn't surprise me when I learn more and more and interview scientists and doctors and nurses who understand the endocannabinoid system and how the plant can balance your nerve receptors and affect your mood. And it's incredible to me that it was a doctor who actually said to you, you should look into medical marijuana. Is that accurate?
So not only did he say that I should look into it, was very transparent and told me that that was a journey I was going to go down alone, because he did not have the knowledge, the expertise, or the studies to give me any recommendations, and he didn't feel qualified. And so what he said is, we have tried what we should have accomplished by now. This should have worked, and it's not working. And not only is it not working, it's failing you. And so there was some self-awareness there, and I'm very grateful to him. I do wish that the medical community had better resources and assets, because it was such angst for me to do this alone. And I see more people in the medical community starting to adopt at least those types of conversations, right? Of, hey, patient, I'm so sorry. I wish I could talk to you more about this, but I'm just not that educated. It was the most honest. And I think you and I know, not many doctors like to admit what they don't know. And so I think that that is actually an admirable thing. If you've got a doctor that says, hey, look, I might not be the best resource for this, but maybe here's some recommendations.
Yeah, and it's again, a lot of people use it as a last resort. A lot of doctors think they're God, so they can't really recommend it, right? Because their egos are very large. I think I'm comfortable saying that. And yet now you're finding more medical professionals understanding the qualities of this plant and its role in the balancing of your endocannabinoid system, and it affects your mood and it affects your pain receptors and all the things that, if you look at the research that's being done on it and the anecdotal evidence that's out there, so many people have discovered it this way. So again, you are living proof, Rye Russell, that this stuff works and can be beneficial to your health if you look into it and find the right mix. Still a lot of people are trying this for the first time, and sometimes they don't want to smoke it or dab it, or even vape it, and they try an edible or a tincture and they overdo it because of the delayed reaction, and then they get in trouble. Now, one of the things we're going to start doing on our shows is soliciting people's stories. I'd like to hear, I just heard your cannabis story. That was great. I would like to know an edible story that you might have, because everybody has at least one edible story that perhaps does not end well or even begin well. Do you have one of those?
Jimmy, as you said, we all have one of those. For me, edibles are something that I strongly recommend, that when you start exploring and you start experimenting to see if that is the type of product for your regimen, definitely start low, go slow. We all kind of know that mantra in the industry, but we all highly recommend it. And I recommend doing it at home. So I have personal story, of course. I've got some fun family stories. But at the end of the day, for me, what was most important is that there was no ambulance needed. And I think that, a lot of individuals, when they don't experience that, they start to have the panic attack, and what symptoms they might be feeling start to get amplified. So I was very lucky to experience it with a trusted friend who was very acclimated to edibles. And so he just sat with me, kept me calm, and then my heart started to race and I started to sweat. And I felt like, you know how when you're just about to get sick and you can start to kind of feel the spins? That's what it felt like. Now, the good news was, yeah, I never got sick. So it was just that you got the spins, I laid down, and then I would say it was about 15 minutes, and who knows my sense of time at that point, but about 15 minutes where I could just start to feel like coming one with my entire body. I could hear my heartbeat and I could really feel a lot of sensation. And once I kind of embraced it, then I was able to relax and enjoy the remainder of that experience. And since then, I've been very careful to start at that low dose, add a little at a time. But I believe that everybody should be very cautious and careful with where and with whom they're experiencing their edibles for the first time.
Right. And again, I preach this all the time, responsible use. And remember, this is a medicine, or at least a plant medicine that you're using, and you are self-medicating. And every body is different, as well as everybody is different as far as your metabolism goes and the effect it's going to have on you. And, on this edition of Cannabis Chat, we are getting some feedback from nurses and educators about what to do when you do too much or when you have taken too much. And the role that CBD plays, pure CBD can play to control your high, is probably the most enlightening thing that I have learned about this plant and about what can happen if you do too much, because CBD will dampen the THC effect and help you get more grounded, if you will. And that to me is an amazing thing. And I even asked the registered nurse who was with us at the last show we did, Julie Battle from Cannawise, I said, can't first responders have a vial of straight CBD oil that they could administer in case they come upon someone who's had too much of a dose? And everybody says, well, this is a great idea. But again, because it's the medical community, everybody's apprehensive about actually administering anything like that from that plant until more research is done. And it's really a shame, because if it was in my house, that's the first thing I do is I go to my cupboard, I get my straight CBD that I take every morning anyway. And I know that would help. Have you heard that story or heard any other anecdotal stories about that?
So I get that text message every now and then, because I think, especially in Maine, we see a trend where the older community is starting to experiment with cannabis, and they're really starting to experiment with edibles, because most of these individuals, they're kind of that school of thought. They don't want to smoke it, and I can understand that. The concern is, though, sometimes is when there's the lack of education with the edibles, then of course some of these situations and experiences can happen. And so I've received that text message every now and then, and actually most recently from my grandmother, who asked me what to do in a situation of somebody having a medical cannabis edible overdose. And what I recommended was exactly that. About 15 milligrams of CBD is what I recommended, because I didn't have too much of the THC. My second recommendation was ibuprofen or Tylenol, because what obviously we're finding right now, and I think that there's still more research to conclude this, but the NSAIDs, those types of pain medications, will work very similar to CBD in terms of blocking the receptors that the THC molecules will bind to. So what I've done, and I've done this before, because Jimmy, as you know, traveling around the country and going to different cannabis events, sometimes you can be gifted quite a few different products. And so I was at an event just a couple weeks ago where I took 2 ibuprofen and 5 milligrams of CBD before I went to the event, because I knew that I would be sampling different products, and it helped me kind of maintain that little bit more, alert and awareness. And so absolutely, I think CBD is great for that. But then obviously in the right application, maybe something like Tylenol or Advil could help bring that down fast as well.
And though that, I think it was a little acronym, the NSAIDs, that's non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. For those of you out there who don't know what NSAIDs are, and they're available, as you can imagine, pretty much everywhere in your pharmacy. They're over-the-counter analgesics, as they say. You mentioned the great state of Maine. Let's talk a little bit about the great state of Maine. 4 years after voters in the state of Maine voted for adult use recreational sales to begin, they're finally going to begin on October 9th in the great state of Maine. I believe we came up with at least 5 locations where the stores will be open. And do you remember where they all were?
Yes. So I believe right now we have 5 total recreational retail licenses, and we're looking at South Portland, Portland, Newry, and Bangor. And I believe we have 2 locations in South Portland. So we've got 5 total, and they're going to be ready come October 9th to serve the community.
And I'm really interested to hear where the flower is coming from, because the state of Maine, and we got to know Uncle Pete Transmontane. I think everybody knows Uncle Pete's Relief in Sanford. He explained it was the water in the state of Maine that's so similar to the water that's in the Emerald Triangle, which I find interesting because we both know it's a lot colder in Maine than it is in Northern California. I don't care how cold it gets in Northern California. Maine probably wins that one going away, especially up towards Presque Isle way there. You know what in Aroostook County, right?
Way up there.
I guess the point is, do you know that they're going to be strains that people from Massachusetts might be familiar with, your Blue Dreams, your Granddaddy Purples, or do you think you're going to have, the great state of Maine strains?
Jimmy, it's a great question. I think we're going to see a little bit of both. And, we know that right now there's 3 cultivation facilities that have been licensed to serve the recreational market. Also 1 testing facility. And so when I look at some of the opportunity and kind of the way that the cannabis licenses are in Maine, I see licensing of brands being a huge opportunity. So you see some of these national brands that may have started in the Emerald Triangle, as you mentioned. And what they did is they got very crafty. And so they would license their brand or their name to a local cultivator, licensee of some sort. And then that was a way where they could collaborate with some expertise from this original national brand now, and that kind of local compliant processes that you really do need a local operator, because compliance is just such a huge piece here. So I think you're going to see some really great Maine brands, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of these national players enter the Maine market with licensing agreements. And at the end of the day, I think you will. You're going to see the Blue Dream that you'll find in other markets, and it might be a little bit different. And that's what's kind of special about cannabis, is that when I go to Maine, I know that the Blue Dream might be a little bit different, but as long as they have a good certificate of analysis and they can tell you the terpene profile, you should be able to do a quick little search in favorite strain from out of state or out of the country, and then find something here in Maine that you will like.
You mentioned out of state and the state of Maine. I know it was a little contentious in the very beginning. Another reason why there was such a long delay is that at first, when this law went into effect in the state of Maine, they really wanted to try to protect their own, but that blocks out a lot of major players, multi-state operators who are already exist in the state of Maine. And, to me, it should be an open enterprise. Now, I understand limiting the amount of licenses one company can have is important for competition and to protect that you don't have a monopoly. But I do understand now that they have loosened up those original restrictions and have allowed MSOs to come in there. And I think Acreage is up there, Curaleaf is up there. I think you have some stories about that contentious debate that was going on there for a few months in Maine.
Oh, Jimmy, I wish this debate was only a few months. This debate has been tried and true from the beginning. And you nailed it. As a media individual, I can absolutely see the debate from both sides. I am a Mainer. I am a former small business owner. I'm still a small business owner. And so I love, and I'll never not love, mom and pop retail. I also love entrepreneurial spirit, drive, and true, genuine capitalist, conscious capitalism. And what I see is two very distinct markets in Maine. As you mentioned, we have Acreage that is affiliated with some local dispensaries. We have Cureleaf, whose founders are from Maine, and obviously that expanded very rapidly. And I know that they have some affiliation in your neck of the woods too, Jimmy. And so at the end of the day, the caregivers, they outnumber all of those retailers, right? There's so many of them. And so they feel that sense of Maine pride, as they should. They are the legacy of Maine cannabis. But we are in a transition time here in Maine where that legacy needs to turn into revenue generation for the state. It needs to turn into a highly regulated market for consumer safety. And I think that there's an opportunity for more collaboration. So I'm certainly not going to, put down a gavel on, what's constitutional and what's not in terms of residency requirements. But from what I can see, I think there is a way to move forward for all players in this space. And I think that back to the brands, there's some really good Maine brands that I think, with the reach and the resources of some of these larger partners, we can start to celebrate New England cannabis across the country.
You use the word caregiver. It's always been part of the medicinal marijuana rollout on a lot of states. If you were to define caregiver, how would you describe what a caregiver is, and how were they able to actually have a stash or grow it and then serve it as a medicinal product to the public?
Sure. Well, Jimmy, what's interesting, when I moved back to Maine, I became a caregiver just to go through the process to understand it a little bit more. So I am still a licensed caregiver in the state of Maine. I don't grow or process any plants myself, but it allows me to have a connection with the Office of Marijuana Policy and really understand what's going on from the inside journalistically. It allows me to network with the caregivers. So essentially, there's a few different tiers of the caregiver license. And people like me, they could become a caregiver and maybe they can broker deals. You can wholesale from one and sell to another, and you can kind of cross some boundaries in the supply chain there. There's people that just get the caregiver's license solely to grow, be it clones that they sell or be it for flower. Then you can get a license for processing. You can get a license for retail. So a caregiver can have a retail store. It's neither a dispensary or an adult use location. It is a caregiver shop. And to me, it's kind of comparing, Walmart of weed to those kind of hometown hardware stores, where I know the gentleman who ordered the hammer that I'm going to go buy. And again, that's really what I think the caregivers are, is a little bit more mom and pop, a little bit more boutique. And I do think that you might get a personal touch from a scale operations you might not be able to find as well. However, I do see a lot of great training from all locations.
You mentioned the marijuana policy board up in Maine. I'm not quite sure I got the exact terminology there, but Eric Gunderson is the main man up there. Oh, excuse me. Rye Russell is the main man. Eric is just dishing out the licenses and doing the official policy for the state of Maine. How has reaction been to how and what he's been handed? The responsibility alone is huge. And I can tell you, it is not an easy thing to do. And the Cannabis Control Commission here in Massachusetts continues to try to get it right and still gets some pushback on a few of the things, especially the social equity initiative. How has what's the pulse of the state of Maine regarding the job that the Marijuana Office Policy Board is doing up in vacation land?
Well, in vacation land, I believe that the Office of Marijuana Policy, I think they're doing a great job. I think all regulators are struggling right now. They're trying to deal with pioneering policy. And I like to use that term with these regulators because I don't know that we celebrate them enough, because they're entrepreneurs in their own right. They're pioneering something that's never been written before. And so having the ability to speak to regulators all over the country, I find that they're creating these support groups with each other because you can't really win, right? Eric Gunderson is, kind of between a rock and a hard place when you have essentially three markets in the cannabis industry: your caregivers, now your recreational sales, and your medical dispensaries. So he is in this kind of position where he needs to oversee all of this and provide regulation that keeps customers safe but doesn't impede business. And I think that's really important here, is how do we keep customers safe while allowing the free markets in this space to develop. And so I think Eric's doing a fantastic job. I would say that it's most of the market seems to have a positive dialogue with the office. And I think that's what's most critical. But in Maine, right, it's much easier. I bet there's caregivers that could say, Eric, I'm going to call your mother if you don't call me back. Where if you're the regulator in Los Angeles, right, it might not be that tight of a community. So I do think that in Maine, we have better access to communication from the industry to the policymakers.
Part of Massachusetts law was supposed to give a opportunity to those who have been most affected by the war on drugs. The social equity applicants, the economic empowerment applicants were supposed to get preferential treatment in the distribution of licenses. However, reality sets in and it's a capital thing, and it really kept a lot of people out of the market who wanted to get in, but realized you needed to have $1 million just to get to the starting line. And that's not an easy thing to come up with. And now, recently, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, has issued delivery licenses to these social equity applicants, which is obviously a great thing because they're finally getting the opportunity that they should have had all along, if you will. And I wonder, is anything like that in place? What's the rules in Maine regarding delivery services?
So I know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done because, for example, there's a lot of loopholes in the law, and especially in a new market like this. So there are branches that if you dissect enough, you can find a loophole to get a delivery license. Now, not necessarily our place to be publishing what those loopholes are, but there are there. What I will say in terms of social equity, because this is something that we see across the country, and no regulator has nailed this, by the way. There's nobody that I would say they should be the poster child because it's been executed correctly. It hasn't. One thing that I see that Maine did that nobody else really seems to have adopted, look at the price points to get a license in Maine, Jimmy, versus California, versus Massachusetts. I mean, you can do all of the paperwork, obviously, let's say with a high price legal team to help you stay compliant, let's say 10 grand worth of work, and then $15,000 worth of filing fees and license fees, whatever you need. That's a smaller number than you'll see almost anywhere else in the country. And so I think the barriers to participate in the market are much lower. I think that does have a social equity play to it. Now, the other thing though, right, we can't take a lot of credit and celebrate that for Maine, because I do not see a lot of policy being written that really encourages that. It's there, right? And we see some municipalities creating a ranking system. But again, I think it's something that's being slightly misused, and I don't know that it's working in the way that it's originally intended. But the good news is policy is like anything else. It's something that has to evolve over time. And as long as us, the industry, works with our policymakers, I do know they are listening. I had a great chat with Kat Packer from the city of Los Angeles. these individuals are listening. And I mean, she's got a much bigger staff than the Office of Marijuana Policy, but she has boots on the ground. She's out there. And so there's, maybe more contention out in that market than there is in Maine. But what I notice is they are admitting, right, this isn't perfect. This was not a perfect rollout. And what was interesting is Kat had said to me specifically, she said, look, I know that there's issues with this office, and I know that there's issues with rollouts. If I wasn't in this seat, I would be out there knocking on this seat's door, asking what's going on. And so I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the accountability. And all I ask for is a little patience while you, the entrepreneur, is trying to work out your business and your pivots. Us regulators are trying to work out our pivots.
And I want to ask you also about expungement of past cannabis possession crimes, because even in new states that are voting on legalization, there is expungement clauses in the bills. In fact, the Vermont Senate and House just passed a bill that's now on the governor's desk that basically expunges all past cannabis possession offenses, I believe up to 2 ounces. I may be wrong on that. It's another reason why if you want to invest in cannabis, you invest in a law firm, because they know what's going on and they'll never go out of business. So let me ask you about expungement in the state of Maine. Has there been any movement towards that? And we all know Steve D'Angelo's Last Prisoner Project. He is dedicated the rest of his life to getting all past cannabis possession crimes expunged.
Well, we have a lot of work to do, and I appreciate everything that Steve and his team is doing, because they're everywhere, right? They're like you and I. They're not going to say no to having a conversation to better the world. And his way of sharing love with the world is this fight. And so I'm honored that we can all help support that fight. Now, Maine, we have a long ways to go. But Jimmy, you have to realize that in Maine, we have one of the lowest African-American populations in the entire country. Right. And so you want to look at those statistics and, really see it. You can look at Maine, because there is such a fewer amount of our population attributed to those individuals, that there's no way for this program to be rolled out smoothly, right? Because in terms of the social equity, right, if we do it just based off of a certain tier crime, well, then that's not really social equity in Maine. And so I think Maine is in a very unique challenge. I think some of us here in the Northeast states really need to look at this, because why is it, now that we've reduced the residency requirement, why aren't we encouraging people to come and participate in our market? And so where our licenses, like I said, the cost is low, I think that there's a real opportunity for those listening that maybe you're not getting the social equity kind of, I don't even want to say treatment that you should be getting in some of these other states. What I'm saying is that I think that Maine is very loose in terms of opportunity right now. And so again, from a cost perspective, expungement is something that I know that we've been talking about over and over again. And I don't know why it's not as easy as a signature and these things get done. But that's why I ran out of patience for the politics game a long time ago.
Oh, well, you joined the club on that. Hey, let's talk about this 10X conference. I guess there's been a nationwide contest of cannabis entrepreneurs who are going to be pitching their products or services. And there's a big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and that's up for grabs this weekend. Is that what's going on with 10X?
It's up for grabs. And so good friends, Holly and Jason, and one of our good friends has put together this amazing pitch contest. And what a great opportunity for the cannabis industry, because we don't have banking. We don't have a lot of, investors. We don't have these different Shark Tank type of shows to support the entrepreneurs. And so Holly and Jason have put together this platform, Cannabis 10X, where independent entrepreneurs and businesses can come together, enter in your pitch deck, your proposal, your business details, and your team, and have an opportunity to pitch in front of hundreds of potential investors. And what is so great is that the community that is entering this, and I entered myself with one of my small businesses, and I'm super excited to be there and support some of my competitors there that they beat me this time, Jimmy, but I'm going to come back for them next time. But that's the great thing about this community, I think, is that we're all in it together and we're all supporting each other. And so this weekend, they are going to have the finals competing for one prize. So I'm really excited to see and be a part of the Cannabis 10X event.
Do you know what the prize is? What the big chunk of money is?
I don't, Jimmy. So I now that I'm thinking about it, I was so excited and so caught up in the opportunity in the community, I can't even tell you what the cash prize is. But what I can tell you is that there's a lot of investors watching. And so even if you're not the ultimate winner, for example, right, one of our companies wasn't the grand prize winner, but because of that event, we've had some very serious conversations. So I recommend to everybody, I always recommend to everybody anyway, to just go out and enter and put yourself out there. But this is an event that you don't want to miss because the opportunity is too big. Get your name out there, be a part of the business community, and who knows what could happen.
And again, Google 10X Cannabis Conference, because it's all virtual, right?
Yes, Cannabis 10X, an entirely virtual event. So we don't need to wear any face mask, thankfully. And we get to just be comfortable in our own homes. We get to watch and support some amazing businesses. And if you're an investor, this is a good opportunity to do some betting and some qualifying of some potential investments.
There you go. Well, Ry Russell, you always are on the pulse. You and Kurt Dalton. We'll throw Kurt in here too. You guys know what's going on in the cannabis business better than any people I've met in the last few years since I've been doing this podcast and these interviews and meeting all these people. So I appreciate so much you taking the time to explain where you're at, what you're up to. We look forward to the Main Man reports, hopefully coming from you at some point on We Talk News. And I continue to look forward to the day when the two of us can actually get together and see each other from 10 feet apart, of course, if not more, now that they keep pushing us away and away for safety reasons, of course.
That's right. Jimmy, I am so excited. Thank you so much. And I'm honored to be the main man. That's a lot to live up to, and I think I can bring the excitement.
How do people find your podcast, Roy?
The best way to find us is weedbudsradio.com. You can connect with me on Instagram, weedbuds with a Z, R-Y, my name, and I'm always on LinkedIn. That's probably the #1 spot to get me. Just R-Y Russell on LinkedIn, and let's connect.
There you go. That's Ry Russell. He's from Weed Buds with a Z. He's our main man. And this has been the latest on the Cannabis Chat. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. For everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, I'm Jimmy Young. Remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Use it responsibly.
We Talk Now, We Talk News, and In the Weeds are all available on most major podcast distributors like iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, and our friends at clnsmedia.com and our flagship, cannabis.net. So subscribe, share, and like our videos on all the social media networks out there, including LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, the WeedTube, and YouTube. Weed Talk and In the Weeds are two productions of Pro Cannabis Media supported by Revolutionary Clinics, one of the top medical cannabis dispensaries in the Massachusetts area, now with 3 locations in Greater Boston, 2 in Cambridge and 1 on Broadway in Somerville. Rev Clinics has a patient-first mission. They will customize your needs as a medical patient with the proper titration and combination of strains, flavors, and products. Rev Clinics, where the patient comes first.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.